Like, I'm actually, Hassan, I actually am one of your friends who actually gives a fuck about you enough to let you know that what the fuck you're doing is shameful, it's harmful, it's unbecoming, it makes you look racist to white people. So, I am formally calling Hassan out. As a white woman, I am formally calling Hassan out for his usage. I am holding him accountable.
For cunt or cracker?
So I just want to know what.
Careful, Dorothy, you can get banned for that on Twitch. Well, we're not calling anybody that. We're not directly. We're asking if that's what she's referring. There is a difference. TOS does care about that. Twitch doesn't give a fuck. Wait, okay, but seriously, which one?
XQC now thinks of Destiny's usage of the N word and if he will now hold Destiny accountable. Because
no one is being called anything. So confused. Yeah, that is the word she is referring to. He did it again?
Reason for not holding
didn't he do it? And he got banned like 3-4 years ago?
Or his whole reason, right? He was like, well, nobody holds Hassan accountable for the C word. And I do. I hold Hassan accountable as a white woman. Like, I'm actually.
This makes so much sense now. Hold on.
Bruh. Like,
Destiny saying the N-word, that is definitely something that I will openly call out. Never have I ever heard them speak out against Destiny saying the N-word openly.
And never have I ever heard you're gonna do that. Like, bruh. Like,
Destiny saying the N-word, that is definitely something that I will openly call out. Never have I ever heard them speak out against Destiny saying the N-word openly.
And never have I ever heard any of his friends, any of his strong friends, anybody around him call him out, hold him accountable, or have any sort of pushback for his C word usage and take. Nobody. Nobody says it. So why doesn't he call his own friends out for saying, guys, why are you guys policing me?
When is this from? Okay, this TikTok that he was watching has 1 like. I just want to point that out. The short that he's watching has 1 like. But Sean doesn't look like this as of the 9th. Wearing this yesterday. Look, that's the wrong thing.
Or if you were to look at just like controversy, yeah, I feel like the way
this is Hassan's outfit yesterday. This is Hassan's outfit today. He just finished interviewing Mahmoud Khalil. This is an older short that he's responding to. Look, okay, no offense to Hassan, but look how much bigger his face looks here versus here. And I understand, like, his hair, another good point. His hair is very dry and windswept, a little bit longer. Here, very short and curly, cropped to the top. So, whatever XQC is reacting to is an old clip. Just want to say that right there. And judging from that hotel room, well, if I had to guess, hotel room with the haircut, the glasses, and the chain, sometime post, I think this is when he was in Paris.
What's going on, everybody? Vive la France.
Okay, so this is Paris. Trying to remember where else he's been this year. So I don't think this is. I don't think this is Japan. I'm trying to remember like where Hassan's been this year. He interviewed AOC and Bernie Sanders, but I don't know if they got a hotel there. Also, if you look at Hassan's stream, the background of this hotel is very different from the background in this hotel room. Oh man, I feel like I know exactly where that is. Okay, well I guess I could just out. It was in May. This is an old video he's reacting to. By like 3 months. 2 months. 2 months. Oh, I'm not watching it. I don't associate with people potentially sexually assault people and send like nudes to people that didn't like approve. I forget what that term is. Guys, can you help me out? What's the term when you take nudes of somebody or somebody sends you nudes and then you take those nudes without that person's permission and send that to other people? What is that called? Oh, is the omni-liberal Destiny? Oh. See, I just know Destiny for his, crimes, potential crimes, alleged crimes until they're proven true in a court of law, which he is currently being sued by like 2 women. God, what is that term? Oh, it's like when okay, so somebody sends you nudes. And then you take those nudes and send them out to other people. What is that called? I feel like if I Google it, I'm gonna get the fucking FBI in here. When is this from? I can't believe I have to run like ops on.
If anything, he should be more mad. The people that he does care about don't care enough about him to hold him accountable. So why does he care so much about us and not about his friends then? I don't get it.
Also, okay, maybe I'm understanding this wrong. It seems like XQC doesn't like being called out for not calling out Destiny on saying the N-word, right? And Destiny publicly says the N-word. He said it on multiple podcasts. Hassan, as far as I'm aware, said the C-word on stream, got banned for it, outside of just explaining the situation to people. Got banned for it, and he also got a trophy from Nabisco, Cracker Pass from Nabisco. It was gold-plated and everything. But that was like 2 years ago. I think longer than that. I'm gonna be honest. I feel like it was like pre-January 6th. So, Destiny, who continues to this day to still use the N-word, versus Hassan, who hasn't publicly, as far as we know, said the C-word in 2-3 years. I don't understand why XQC doesn't like being called out for that, but I do appreciate Casey Chow's response. Now that I understand what it was to, unless he is saying it outside of stream with people, I mean, he could be doing that, but no one, I don't want to say no one in the community and no one who communicates it has said those things. Even haters aren't like, okay, let's say Destiny and Hassan used to be friends, right? I don't think Destiny has ever been like, oh, he's constantly dropping the C word. Whereas there is actual video, proof of like Destiny constantly saying the N-word, like on a podcast, like multiple times. And I'm not talking like just one time. I'm talking like multiple podcasts. Multiple times he said it. He said it on his own live stream. And I think that's kind of the difference. and I think this is also what Casey Tron is explaining, that she holds Hassan accountable for saying the cracker word. But you still, for one time 2 years ago, as far as we all know, and I'm assuming Casey Tron would know Hassan better than I would. XQC, on the other hand, hears Destiny use the N-word regularly. And I think that's what the difference is, if I'm understanding that correctly. I don't think she's actually backing up. Okay. I can't tell if this is parody or not. Part. But if he's throwing around the C word off of stream, I mean, sorry. When I say I mean, it's because from what he communicates to chat and from what he posts to Instagram, according to what he posts to chat and Discord, he very rarely does anything outside of stream. Like, the way I understand his schedule, as most recently described, based off of what he was talking today about, that he, like, gets up, he works out, goes and plays basketball, he, does his stream, and then he falls asleep. And that's just, like, his autistic schedule, and, like, so many times he's complained on stream about how, like, he wants to spend time with his friends, but he can't because of schedule, because by the time he's done, he's just so burnt out. And, like, his friends actively make fun of him for that, too. So if he is saying around people, it must be his parents. But also, I think the N-word is far worse than the C word. I'm gonna just throw that out there.
Does that make sense to me? I don't really get it. Now explain it. No. You don't understand. Because he doesn't believe it. C word is a slur. Yeah, but his friends do, though. And I know they do. And I know they do. And I...
Wait. Hold on. Which will ban me, though? Okay. Because he doesn't say the C is a slur. Easy XQC doesn't believe the C is a slur. Oh, he's just repeating that over and over again. Still derogatory, and neither should be said. So I guess my question is like, why? Because, like, as far as I understand it, there's two definitions for, like, the slur, if you're gonna quote unquote it. Where, like, one is like, oh, you're so pale, you look like a saltine, and the other one is, oh, you're a slave driver. I think those terms are very different than the N-word. And I you know, if fuck is a curse word, and fuck is more explicit than shit, should I not say shit anymore? But again, this is an old video of Hassan that XQC is reacting to. And by old, I mean at least for May. And we don't even know what came before or after this.
C word is a slur. Yeah, but his friends do, though. And I know they do.
And so he's saying his friends do. XQC is saying Hassan's friends do. XQC, you should have kept gambling. It would be fun. XQC, because you don't dick suck him like everyone else. Not the same. Explain. Cock.
And I know they do.
Hassan is just a massive hypocritical clown. His take is irrelevant because the only thing he does is lie for the optics. Hassan is white. He can say it. What's the C word, man? You're cooking, XQC. XQC worships he bad faith. Sorry, it's moving so fast. XQC, he wants worshippers. Also, he is bad faith. Don't forget he called Destiny a slur. That is anti-Destiny race. Anti-Destiny's race? Clanker?
And
What's a clanker? You're in the fucking kindergarten. Don't say this. Don't say that. C word, N word. Bro, move on. Explain
I
it.
know... For...
Sorry, I'm trying to keep track.
For a fact that some of his close friends.
I need to play the clip in whole without interrupting it. I need to shut the fuck up.
You're gonna do that? Like, bruh. Like.
Destiny saying the N-word, that is definitely something that I will openly call out. Never have I ever heard them speak out against Destiny saying the N-word openly.
And never have I ever heard any of his friends, any of his strong friends, anybody around him call him out, hold him accountable, or have any sort of pushback for his C-word usage and take. Nobody. Nobody says it. So why doesn't he call his own friends out for saying, guys, why are you guys policing me? If anything, he should be more mad. The people that he does care about don't care enough about him to hold him accountable. So why does he care so much about us and not about his friends then? I don't get it. Does that make sense to me? I don't really get it. Now explain it. No. You don't understand. Because he doesn't believe it. C-word is a slur. Yeah, but his friends do, though. And I know they do. And I know for a fact that some of his close friends.
Okay, so from what I'm understanding, maybe I'm not understanding him right. What I'm understanding, XQC is saying that none of Hassan's friends hold him accountable for saying the C word. And again, as far as I know, publicly and recordedly, since that incident where he got banned and got the award from Nabisco, he has not said it other than like reiterating the story to people, like telling it as I am now. So, I think that's very different than saying the N-word every day. Publicly, in your live streams, in front of other people. I don't know, maybe that's just me. But, okay, so now that I understand XQC better, now I can understand Casey.
Actually, Hassan, I actually am one of your friends who actually gives a fuck about you enough to let you know that what the fuck you're doing is shameful, it's harmful, it's unbecoming, it makes you look racist to white people. So, I am formally calling Hassan out. As a white woman, I am formally calling Hassan out for his usage. I am holding him accountable. So I just want to know what XQC now thinks of Destiny's usage of the N-word and if he will now hold Destiny accountable. Because his whole reason for not holding or his whole reason, right, he was like, well, nobody holds Hassan accountable for the C word, and I do. I hold Hassan accountable as a white woman. Like, I'm actually, Hassan, I actually...
Fart noise. The fart noise gets me. Okay, now this makes so much more sense. I got it. Also, I do want to say XQC was friends with Hassan. The soundboards are ridiculous. I know, she's great. XQC was friends with Hassan when the whole situation went down. So did XQC call out Hassan for using the word? I'd also like to point out that I am white. I also get to decide if I think this word is offensive. Personally, for me, I don't think it's offensive because I am not a slave driver or as white as a cracker, like a saltine, if you will. So I don't think it's offensive because I'm not being called either of those things. And if somebody called me one of those things, I know those aren't true, so I don't give a fuck. I don't understand. I don't think it's derogatory. I'm sorry. You cannot like me for thinking that, but I am a white woman. I am allowed to say I don't find that term derogatory because I am not a slave driver. I am not somebody who owns slaves. If you're offended by that because you were somebody who owned slaves, that's on you. If you can't distinguish the fact that you didn't do that, those things, those things don't actually apply to you, then move on. Like, I don't know what the fuck to say. Like, I think it's dumb as fuck. I grew up in a town where people were called pineys, drove around in fucking General Lee's screaming the N-word, and then cried about being called the C-word. I watched people my age fake lynchings. Ooh, ooh, the C-word is not a slur. Ooh. Like, in South Jersey, I witnessed this. So, I'm sorry, the N-word has different derogatory meanings than the C-word. When I hear a white person drop the N-word, the first thing I think of is, oh, they want to lynch somebody. Because I have never heard a white man drop the N-word in a way that wasn't offensive, mean, rude, demeaning, belittling. What do I think when somebody uses the C-word? I think they're describing a bumpkin that lives in the middle of nowhere whose grandpappy owned slaves on their old plantation. That's what I think of when I hear the C-word. But I am a white woman. I also get to have an opinion on this. For once. For once, I fit a little stereotype. Where was I? That's so off course. I was doing so good. We got 0 seconds into the first video. I'm gonna catch a ban, watch.
Relentless rain leading parts of the East Coast a waterlogged mess. Overnight in North Carolina, flash floods submerged entire neighborhoods.
Look at that.
Similar scenes to the north in New Jersey. And
Yep. That's Massachusetts. Wait, that's Massachusetts. Jersey was pretty rough. At least I got you before you got to your first video. Fair and based.
neighborhoods.
Look at that.
Similar scenes to the north in New Jersey.
Yeah, we had
And
Not this
Massachusetts, where this morning's commute descended into chaos after sections of the critical I-93 interstate washed out. Some drivers rescued from nearby roads.
My car started filling up with water all the way up to the seat inside. There were 3 officers that I had to climb through the window, and he gave me a piggyback.
All this while
Next time I will be cruel and get you towards the end of a video so you can't end it, bro. Did you not see me the other stream where I bounced between like 4 videos at the same time and had to get back to Act Man?
While the village of Ruidoso, New Mexico is now focused on cleaning up after flash floods damaged hundreds of homes. This sped up surveillance video showing how quickly waters rose in the store. And tonight, harrowing accounts of survival.
They were watching the water come up. They thought they were going to die. We thought they were going to die.
Jason Fulcher says a wall of water tore through the trailer park. His 7-year-old daughter and 13-year-old son were trapped inside their home.
They said that the bed was floating, and so they got on the mattress of the bed that was floating up, and they were holding on to the ceiling fan. There's only, maybe 2 foot before they were out of room and they would have drowned.
And flooding remains a concern on the East Coast. Tonight,
That's
flood watches are
awful.
impacting 9 million Americans from North Carolina to Maryland.
She's a fun, wind-up yap toy. Charge her up and she'll go. Fuck off, Torpy.
Tom.
So many on
Charge
alert
you
tonight.
up.
All right, Aaron, we thank you for that.
Walked at the pageant. Dang.
Now to Texas, where crews are searching mile after mile of a debris-filled river. Tonight, for the first time, we're hearing a dispatch of a volunteer.
Oh, by the way, since I have at least 2 paying attention right now, we're at 92% of the Discord, the Fortnite Discord night. We've got 19 days left. We're almost there. I've also added 3 new noises. I'm here for people who don't get first, but don't want to be last. Boomer. Is it working? Oh, that's the wrong thing. Nice. Thank you, Tim. Got it. Awesome. We'll plan that. I'll post dates in the Discord. There's also a new one called PTS, Each of you gets a stream. One. Okay? Use it wisely.
Firefighter who wanted to call a code red to alert residents about the flooding. So
Look at distraction. Ooh, butterflies. Wait, is this AI? No, it's from 8 years ago.
So what happened? Here's Morgan Chesky.
Family comes first. This is what we're supposed to do. Nobody goes home till both of my parents are found.
Tonight in Texas, with more than 170 people still missing, searchers on a river offering little closure. Robert Brake Jr. on a mission to find his beloved mother, swept away alongside his father in Friday's deadly surge.
I would hold him and hug him, tell him I love him. Thank you for being such great parents. This is what I would tell him.
Amid questions.
Is she? Is she playing? Look.
This is the Cape May Library. Or this is the Cape May County Zoo. I recognize this enclosure anywhere. Yes, I think it is.
Look at Mom, she's in pounce position.
Yeah, this was like right after they were born. They got to spend a lot of time with their mom. There's 2 of them that were born. I think they were both girls.
Yeah, she's in pounce position.
They're still there last I was there.
Look. Test your mom. Oh my God! Jump scare. You get a video? Save it. Jump scare. Mom, do you get a video of that? I did. That was so cool.
Wait a minute. That sounds like me in the background. Listen.
Jump scare. You get a video? Save it. Jump scare. Mom, do you get a video of that? I did. That was so cool. That was hysterical. I wish I had that on video. That was so cute. Save it. It's so cool. Aww. Is she?
Questions about whether more could have been done to warn people. Tonight, new dispatch audio obtained by NBC Austin affiliate KXAN revealing a volunteer firefighter asked to send a code red alert at 4:22 on the morning of July.
I just said, I don't know if that's me or not, but thank you for the distraction. Back to the video.
July 4th.
Is there any way we can send a code red out to our Hunt residents asking them to find higher ground or stay home?
10-4, stand by. We have to get that approved with our supervisor.
It's unclear when the first
Oh man, where was this? Austin? No.
have been done to warn people. Tonight, new dispatch audio obtained by NBC Austin affiliate KXAN revealing a volunteer firefighter asked to send a code red alert at 4:22 on the morning of July 4th.
Is there any way we can send a code red out to our Hunt residents asking them to find higher ground or stay home?
10-4, stand by. We have to get that approved with our supervisor.
It's unclear when the first alert went out to Code Red subscribers, though the mayor says the first notification he received was at 6 a.m., 90 minutes later. Local officials have not responded to NBC News' request for comment.
It was apocalyptic.
Lisa Miller visiting Camp Mystic today after her 3 daughters survived, sharing how a counselor saved her youngest as the waters rose.
And it got up to her shoulders, so her counselor put her on her back to keep her safe.
A former Mystic camper herself, Miller says her daughter linked arms with girls in her cabin to keep from floating away.
Holding hands kind of in a chain.
Her daughter describing the last words she heard from camp director, Dick Eastland.
Okay, you girls be safe. I'm going to go help Bubble in. And that's the last that they saw him.
And tonight, authorities confirming that 5 campers and 1 counselor still remain unaccounted for from Camp Mystic. In the meantime, Washington confirming that President Trump will be visiting Kirk County tomorrow although those details.
Tim, since you're fucking around, can you find me the link for the full, God damn it. I just saw the pinned comment, you son of a bitch. Can you find the link for the Trump press conference from today in Texas for me?
Are still unclear. Tom.
Morgan Chesky for us, and we're going to pick up right there. As Morgan reported, President Trump is set to visit Texas tomorrow, and he's making new headlines about local officials' response to that flooding. In an exclusive interview with Meet the Press moderator Kristen Welker, Kristen joins me now. And Kristen, you just spoke to the president on the phone. What did he tell you?
Tom, we asked President Trump if Texas officials could have done more and if there should have been a better warning system. He told us that local officials, quote, love those children, love those people, and nobody ever saw a thing like this coming. This is a once in an every 200-year deal, he said. In retrospect, he said, after having seen this horrible event, I would imagine you'd put up alarms in some form. But he also praised Texas officials for doing a great job, Tom.
We thank you for watching, and remember,
conspiracies pick up steam after major weather events. A Metro News station's weather radar attacked this week, going offline briefly. Threats have come from a far-right extremist group called Veterans on Patrol, the same group that pushed for border vigilantes. Its leader, Michael Lewis Arthur Meyer, who has been arrested several times in several states, posting online, "We intend to take as many NEXRADs offline as possible once our attack simulations have prepared us."
They sort of will grab on to conspiracy theories, and they will make them sound credible to a portion of the population.
Rachel Goldwasser of the Southern Poverty Law Center has been tracking the group for years.
He's become very vehement against the military and its members, and I do think that that could pose a danger in the future as well.
They said Hurricane Helene was caused by government weapons.
The U.S. military plays God with the weather and sent weather weapon Helene into western North Carolina to depopulate and steal land.
That group's eyes now set on extreme weather events, calling weather radars weather weapons.
Yeah, that's impossible.
Sebastian Torres works with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. He says radars are essential to knowing when and where severe weather will hit.
We're here at the National Weather Service's Norman location. This is the radar right here. Look at that massive thing. Here, they've got a fence. They've got barbed wire. They've even got this no trespassing sign, because if someone gets over and knocks this out at all, it could be a very serious situation for you and your loved ones. You don't see it. There's nothing that can do to change things.
Well, they shouldn't believe it.
Dean Robert Palmer at OU is the director of the National Weather Center. Says he takes the threats seriously.
I mean, I've heard about it from our federal partners, and yeah, so we're being careful.
Dylan Brown, Oklahoma's News 4.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking.
We begin tonight with breaking news that could shed light on what happened almost a week ago.
I was muted. This is from 21 hours ago, just to guys keep you in the timeline of the events we are watching.
One of the worst natural disasters in recent memory began to unfold. Dispatch audio from Central Texas about a half hour before the first emergency warning was issued for the hardest hit county along the Guadalupe River. Now, the first call we have is from a firefighter at 3:37 a.m. local time. The calmness of his voice is remarkable, all things considered.
Yes, ma'am. Just for your 43, the Guadalupe is starting to come up, and Shoemaker is no longer passable at this time.
That's the Guadalupe River rising, and one of the main streets flooded. And from that point on, as the audio shows, problems were growing fast.
Respond to 2029, Highway 39, 2029, Highway 39. It's going to be for a water rescue. House callers, house flooded. We're getting multiple calls off of 39. People are stating their houses are flooding. We're trying to advise them to get to higher area.
Now, the next piece of audio is of what we reported on last night, a firefighter requesting an emergency alert be issued to the community, and the dispatcher not able to make that call.
Is there any way we can send a code red out to our Hunt residents asking them to find higher ground or stay home?
10-4, standby. We have to get that approved with our supervisor.
How many lives could that have saved? Because keep in mind, a lot of the worst flooding was around, I think, that 7 a.m. mark, but it was really coming in at like that 4. It was starting to come in at 4. My timeline's a little murky. Bear with me. So, like, that would have saved so many fucking lives, man.
As we reported last night, it would be 90 minutes from that call to when Kerrville's mayor told the Texas Tribune that he finally received a code red alert. Now, during that time, the Guadalupe River would overflow in a wall of water several stories high at its peak.
There's people in that house. Oh my God. The whole house is up and there's people stuck in the house as it's floating away. Oh my God. That's fucking horrific.
And the 911 calls would just keep coming.
We received a phone call at our fire station to have a lady, she's frantic. She's at Casa Bonita 117 Corto Way or Casa Bonita Lodges, and she said her children are on top of one of the cabanas and they're trapped.
Well, the area is home to many summer camps, as you know. This one, boys rode out the worst of it in the rafters of their cabin when water reached the top of their bunks. Camp Mystic for girls, though, was, of course, the hardest hit. This is a new image of some of the evacuation efforts early on. In a moment, we'll be joined by one of the staffers who was there that night and took this photo. But as would become clear, though, 27 campers and staffers, many of the campers as young as 8, tried to get out and didn't make it. And when daylight came, a few hours later, the true dimensions of it all became clear. In addition to all the dead, dozens and dozens of people missing. And tonight, they still are. Upwards of 160 people, in addition to the 120 plus fatalities. And as to that dispatch audio, tonight the man who recorded it and helped install Kerr County's Code Red system spoke with CNN's Aaron Burnett about the timing of the alerts that followed.
So are you saying as early as 3:27 a.m. that things could have played out very differently in terms of alerts and code reds and frankly, just to be blunt, hundreds possibly of lives saved?
Well, it's too late for Hunt. The water's up, and the volunteer fire department guy's been there. He knew it was coming because he's awake and he's sitting in his truck looking at it. But the water's come up, and the wall of water's heading down to Ingram. So you hear some radio traffic in a little bit that's going to warn people that warn to tone out Ingram that they need to start evacuating the RV park downriver. And I fully believe that a really quick action could have, and I'm not going to hindsight it all, but a quick action could have helped people downriver. But at 3:30, once it hit 4:30, it was just too late.
Okay, that's fair.
The code red would have been ineffective, in my opinion.
Well, for more on the timeline, we're joined by CNN's Shimon Prokupecz, who is in Kerr County. So, Shimon, we know that the National Weather Service sent a flash flood warning just after 1 a.m. early on the morning of July 4th. Have local officials explained if they were monitoring the weather in the hours
I was very wrong on my timing. I apologize.
between when that warning went out and when they started to send alerts out to residents?
No, they've not, Anderson, and that's the key thing in all of this. It wasn't until hours later when you hear from city officials, one of them was running, another one gets woken up, much later than 1 o'clock when the flooding is actually occurring. And I think that is what's so significant about that audio that we just heard, is that everything that audio tells us is that by the time authorities were in the midst of this, they were dealing with this, it was already too late. People were already in danger, and they were surprised by all of this. The people, the community, was because all of this happened in the middle of the night, and we have.
Reminds me of in World War Z. I already have that story, but I appreciate it. I appreciate the link. I have that queued up in the watch later. Reminds me of in World War Z. That kind of like slow burn start, because like you start in the book, if you've read it, if you haven't, skip ahead or turn off the live stream for a minute. If you read it, you start with like the story about the scuba divers and the little boy that's sick in China, and then it starts to move to like the different areas where people slowly get more infected. And then there's one of the most memorable scenes to me is when there's the wife in her house and she's talking about like all things that needed to get done, prescriptions that needed to get filled, her husband, how frustrated she was. And then all of a sudden, like everything changes as like the zombies literally break in her back door. and like she rips the head off of a zombie like that, and it goes from like thinking about prescription, like refilling prescriptions, to having to save your children in like a matter of seconds. And like that, this is kind of what it reminds me of too, is like that slow burn across the United States is like people were not aware in World War Z of this coming mess, even as it slowly crossed through into New York, and then spread faster and faster. It was absolutely like everyone was absolutely unprepared, and the entire United States and the entire world pay for that in consequence, because no one was ready for this kind of thing. There were no things in place for such situations. And it feels very similar to that. When, you know, life imitates art, art imitates life, I guess.
No information from any of the authorities here on the local level, the county official.
Oh, Tim, do you have a reader, like a... I'm sorry. An SD card to USB reader? I got the wrong size. So, I need one.
The city officials, that any of them were monitoring the weather at 1 in the morning, at 2 in the morning, at 3 in the morning, when days before.
And I don't think my desktop has an SD slot in it.
Or the Texas Department of Emergency Management was putting out press releases telling people, beware, this is coming. There could be a concern here. We have no accountability from locals as to what they were doing, how they were preparing, and whether or not they were communicating with state officials who were having.
I will have to check. I haven't seen one in forever. What's on the card? I've been filming. I'm doing a vlog, a fitness vlog. And I was like, oh, I don't want to have to rely on Wi-Fi all the time. I don't want to have to rely on my phone all the time because my phone camera quality is shit. So I busted out my old handheld. And I've been using that, and it's like, it's got an AV out, which is fine, but I'd rather just use the card and download it. I've uploaded them to Patreon, but I did some title card slides. Does your handheld not have a USB slot? No. It's got an AV out. This is an old USB. Then in here, it's just got the battery and the SD card slot. It's a Canon PowerShot SX420 IS Wi-Fi. Great day. Yep. Great time. Wait. Outside of your, wait, hold on. Outside of your Switch, do you have a device that accepts SD cards? Switch work here, since it's micro anyway? I don't think so. I'll have to look. I don't know. Sorry, I'm setting the day and time. Maybe I could... Where in my computer would I find out if my computer has an SD? I guess I could just type in SD card. What? No. Later. No. Let me see what I have for you. I will get back to you on it. I may have an old laptop. You can do this. I have my Chromebook, but the problem with my Chromebook is that it's not the best, and I'm having a real big issue uploading over Wi-Fi because it's all kind of coming out like shit. So I was thinking because it was on my desktop, I could upload it there. But I also, there's another desktop inside from the store. I might check that out. But I have a Lenovo, if that helps. I'm gonna check again. Hold on. Most computers won't have a slot for it anymore unless you purposely build it that way. Damn. That sucks. Why did they take away all the good shit?
Having these concerns, Andersons, and that is the thing. That is the key now here. What
I'm trying to think now. I'm like, what do I have that might have an SD card slot? I have the Steam Deck. Because most devices can just be hooked up to a PC now. Yeah, that's true.
What were they doing? How were they preparing? Were they anticipating any of this? Were they in communication with the weather services, any meteorologists, any people down and up the river to see what was going on? And so far, there is nothing here from the officials on that.
Deck uses micro SD. It won't help. Like literally trying to catalog all of my electronics in my head.
I understand you're in a hard-hit area right now that only a few media outlets have been able to get access to before. What are you seeing?
Well, Anderson, it's just shocking. We are lucky enough to sort of tell these stories because this community wants this story told because this area has been cut off from public access by the Texas Department of Public Safety, the state police here. This is Bumblebee Hill. It's in Ingram, but I would just want to show you here, Anderson, the devastation here. This is, you know, not really that close to the river, but these are all the homes that suffered from the water damage. You see all of the destruction and the garbage and people starting to clean up their homes. People were on the roofs of these homes as the floodwaters were rising, riding out the storm to try and survive. I want to just quickly show you one other thing, Anderson, just to show you the power of this river and what was happening here. Here's how this went. This river that's 39, so it's on the other side of that road. It went over that road, through this creek, up the back way here, all the way into this house, Anderson. And quickly, one more thing I want to show you. This here is the water line. This is the water line into this home.
Oh
the
my
people
God.
were sleeping. There were 8 people in this home, including kids, and they rode out the storm. They were able to get up because of the noise from trees breaking. They realized that the weather had turned, that the water was rising. It was in their home to their waist. They quickly grabbed everyone. There were 8 people in this home, and they survived on this roof. They rode out for hours on the roof. This family called 911, and they were told there was nothing at that point that they could do for them, that they were just to get to the highest point possible. I spoke to this family. They are thankful. They let us into their home. They let us into their property. They are just thankful that they survived. And now they're just trying to rebuild as many in this small community because no one expected that the waters would rise in such a way. I mean, this house, when they built this house, it was even built higher by them so that they could avoid any potential flooding. And even that didn't work. And that water went across the street into all of those homes. just, you know, Anderson, just utter
incredible.
devastation here. And it's just so sad to see all this, Anderson, just so sad.
Democratic Congressman Jared Moskowitz of Florida. He was the former director of the Florida Division of Emergency Management.
So, Congressman, I just want to make sure I'm getting this right. You have Noem arguing FEMA should financially support states that are undergoing disasters, but leave the actual emergency response to those states. In your opinion, is that the most effective model?
Well, I think the best way I can sum it up is when Donald Trump was talking about Israel and Iran as he was boarding the helicopter. He said, they don't know what the F they're doing. And Kristi Noem has no idea what she's doing. Okay? FEMA is cutting the grant that gives states money to build their capacity, at the same time telling them they need to build more capacity. She's been pausing grants of $10 billion for previously approved disasters. They cut 20% of the workforce, and every decision has to come to her. Okay, David Richardson, who's the new FEMA administrator or acting administrator, has zero emergency management experience. He doesn't know what he's doing, and he's not going to do anything without Kristi Noem's approval. So when we see reports that they didn't send swiftwater rescue crews for 72 hours, that's because Kristi Noem didn't approve it for 72 hours. Let me tell you, by the time those crews arrived...
My phone uses SD. This size. I might be able to find the cable and see if that'll do it. I'll look for the cable and see if I can find it. Sure, it's somewhere in my mess of cables, and it uses 1 or 2 terabytes with my Switch. And I use 1 or 2 terabytes with my Switch. I think my phone is 200 gig or 400 gig. This is 64 gig. This is a dick measuring contest, okay?
Arrived, they were useless. Okay, after 72 hours. When I was the director in Florida, the way that would have worked is the regional administrator would have woken me up in the middle of the night when those alerts were going on. If not the regional administrator, the weather folks who work in the EOC, the Emergency Operations Center, would have woken me up, or my deputy, in the middle of the night. We would have turned on the Emergency Operations Center. We would have gone to a level 1, and FEMA would have automatically moved those swiftwater rescue crews, Task Force 1 and Task Force 2, would have moved them. Without my permission, they would have done it, because that was their job. That did not happen here. Right. And so today I sent a letter to both the Homeland Security Committee and the Transportation Committee asking for a full investigation on the timeline of when decisions were made and why they've deviated from known protocols. And it's questionable whether these decisions may have caused additional death in Texas.
I think that is a very important point, Congressman. You know, some could argue that the inaction of the Homeland Security Secretary did, in fact, result in deaths. A lot is being said about FEMA as of late. You know, this has been particularly an agency that has been in the crosshairs of this administration. Is FEMA necessary from your perspective? And if so, why?
Well, it's not only necessary, it's mandatory. First of all, it's congressionally mandated. So the executive branch can't get rid of it without Congress. They can break it, which is what they've done. Look, the industry has known that FEMA has needed reform for some time. I've been running a bill for 3 years to get FEMA out of Homeland because it's hard for an agency that requires speed to work in an agency that is a giant bureaucracy. So Homeland has been slowing FEMA down for years. So I actually have that bill with Byron Donalds. It's bipartisan. He's running for governor of Florida. I got Tom Tillis in the Senate and Padilla, Senator Padilla, both North Carolina and California, who experienced major disasters, to get FEMA out of Homeland. There's additional reforms that we could do at FEMA with block grants and things of that nature. But look, Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, they go bankrupt without FEMA. They get a hurricane this summer, they don't get FEMA money, they're bankrupt. South Carolina, North Carolina, bankrupt. Okay, you get into the states.
What happens if a state defaults?
that deal with Tornado Alley.
Or gets bankrupt. Like, what happens when a state goes bankrupt?
Bankrupt, okay? Tennessee, Kentucky, Kansas, these states go bankrupt without FEMA. So we need to move from the ridiculousness of getting rid of FEMA and figure out what reforms we can make to make FEMA better and faster. But that's not what Kristi Noem is doing. She's actually made it worse. She's made FEMA less responsive, so much for efficiency in Doge. Okay, and so, you know, this is just my belief. I actually don't think the West Wing knows how bad FEMA is right now, and they are not even aware the damage that Kristi Noem has done to the agency.
I think they're aware. For states, they have to cut programs to be solvent, since states don't use bankruptcy to pay business. Okay, but let's say like there's no other programs to cut. Like, what happens when they are completely out of funding all over? They sell assets. So what would, they would sell like the parks. Like, what would be an asset to the state? Land, buildings, cars? Okay. So I see the long game there now. You force the states to carry all these burdens to apply to the people. The states have to cover all of it by themselves. States then go bankrupt and then have to sell back to the country. I understand it. Yeah, you get property. Yeah. But the admin collapses, which collapses the tax base, spirals further. Yeah, you know how capitalism is a death cult? I have a lot of feeling that these people are aware of what is happening, and they just do not care about the outcome. As 100% my feelings on this. They're like, oh, I don't care. I'm rich enough. This won't affect me. Oh, I'll be dead in a few years. This won't affect me.
And they're not going to find out until real time. God forbid we get a real big storm this summer. I'm worried that FEMA is not prepared, and it's all because of what the secretary has done. And then what she's going to say is, oh, see, we told.
Well, technically, states and the Fed government can't ever go bankrupt since we print money. Okay. But the government, but the federal government, right? Not the state. Fed would have to take over the state until solvency. Yeah. See? Are the wheels turning? There's some interesting examples post Civil War. I'm just thinking like Uno reverse. Like, let's say the North didn't win the Civil War, right? And some of the states in the North defaulted. What would the South impose on the North? You know, like that's like some of the things that I hear. Like, what could you get a state to do in order to not be bankrupt anymore? I'm not trying to go all QAnon here. I just think like, okay, if I was a fascist and I wanted every state to bend its whim to me, and I wanted to make as much money as humanly possible, what's the best way to ruin everything and get all of the money I want? And it's like, okay, make the states go bankrupt. They can't pay for anything, so then they have to rely more on the federal government. The federal government takes over the state till it's balanced. But the states can't go bankrupt. I don't know. I just feel like we've done a lot of, but he can't do this because the Supreme Court. Cities and towns can, since they are incorporated in most cases. I'm like, okay, what would a felon who wants like education, things just get shoestrings smaller and smaller, police, commerce? Yeah, absolutely. Or what would happen to the people if they saw that happening? Do you think people who are struggling to pay for your schools, pay for childcare, pay for police, all on a local level that's much tighter, do you think they're going to want to vote for like staying in that state and struggling, or joining a different state that is a fascist state? You'll have like one teacher per like 15,000 kids. Oh my God. That would be insane.
Told you FEMA wasn't ready. No. You took something that needed reform and you broke it to the point that it barely can function.
Hey, Congressman, I think everyone can hear the urgency and the concern in your voice. I certainly appreciate the way you opened this conversation with that quote.
States can't combine and split, fortunately / unfortunately, for all of the good and bad associated with that. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, would the people in that state rather stay part of that state or want to join a new union of states? Like Alabama could never buy Mississippi. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying like the federal government is buying all of the states and incorporating it into this awful privatized fascist nightmare. Mark my words. Clock it. 7:02 on 7/11.
I want to quote you in a tweet this morning, noting, as the former emergency management director of
Like, if you can't send in the troops to make them bend the knee, you're going to hurt them in the next place it hurts. It probably would be like the way the Fed owns a lot of land out west. Yeah.
Florida, I'm calling for an immediate investigation at Homeland GOP, Homeland Dems, and Transportation Dems, Transport Dems at Transport GOP. If accurate, this is a major deviation from FEMA protocol, may have slowed down response and been a contributing factor. This was in response to the CNN reporting that Kristi Noem didn't authorize FEMA's response, deployment of its urban search and rescue teams until more than 72 hours after the flooding began. When Kristen Welker asked the president about Noem's policy of her slow response, Mr. Trump said, "I don't know anything about it. We were right on time. She's done a great job." So, sir, I will give you an opportunity to expand on the point that you just made about the preparedness or the lack thereof of this administration and its control of FEMA as we get ready, because it surprises me, sir, that these red states that you just named are not concerned about what could come if they get, a big tornado, a big hurricane this season.
Yeah, Michael Brown was doing a great job right before he was fired. So, at the end of the day, she's going to find herself to be the next Michael Brown if she gets a big storm and the agency is not ready because of her actions. The reason why I'm so animated is, look, I was an emergency management director in Florida, a Democrat for a Republican governor. Okay, this is supposed to be nonpartisan.
Move on to the next video.
Good evening from New York.
Hey, Chris Hayes, my new favorite YouTuber. Hold on, I gotta clear out the playlist so I don't accidentally go stuff we've already.
I'm Chris Hayes. 7 days after that tragic flooding in Texas, at least 121 people have been confirmed dead, while 166 are still missing. Almost a week out from the initial flooding, search and rescue operations have now shifted to a recovery phase as hope of finding survivors dwindles. And with that horrible reality front of mind, we're starting to learn the ways in which the Trump administration failed in its response to that deadly flooding. According to an eye-opening new report, Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem, the person ultimately in charge of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, delayed the federal response to that deadly flooding for more than 3 days, even as local search and rescue teams raced to find survivors. As you probably have noticed, Kristi Noem has been the center of a number of stories we've reported on, like the nearly 300 people the administration renditioned to a notorious prison in El Salvador, or the National Guard and Marines dispatched to the streets of L.A. and their show of force there, or the militarized ICE raids scooping up your neighbors across the country, or ICE agents arresting a U.S. senator and New York City controller. And throughout all those very serious stories, she has weirdly acted much more like a social media influencer than a cabinet official. She has spent the bulk of her time dressing up, staging political stunts for social media, like the time she dressed like a firefighter during a training drill in Alaska,
Howdy,
or the
partner.
time she wore a life preserver for a
Casino and Museum.
Oh my
Blue
goodness!
_pal just
Welcome
traded
in,
with
Blue.
2 viewers.
Hi, how was your stream? Hi, everybody. Welcome in. We're watching the news. Ow, my finger hurts. What did you stream? Doesn't say.
photo shoot with the Coast Guard, or when she put on an ice vest and grabbed
I
a
streamed
gun
Bioshock
to
Remastered. Nice. You said that it was your first time playing it, right? How are you liking it? And what is your opinion so far? And did you beat
record a video for social media, or this infamous image of her posing in front of detainees at that mega prison wearing a $50,000 watch. Kristi Noem is one of the most powerful people in the U.S. government. She has a profoundly important job.
Oh, why? I need to know why.
And responsibility, and her tenure has been enormously destructive through the intentional dismantling of so much about the fabric of this country, but particularly
Started out fun, but it got annoying as I kept playing it. What part are you at?
our emergency disaster response infrastructure, which is, of course, critical to disasters like the flooding in Central Texas. Now, back in June, there's a somewhat little noticed item. We learned about a new policy from the secretary, which, get this, required her direct approval of any DHS contract worth more.
Part where I'm supposed to join some fishery or something. Oh no, there's somebody in there you're supposed to rescue. I had to fight some lady with hook hands. Yeah, the splicers. A lot of them got. Oh, that's the one that like throws them though. I think. It's a very story-driven game. It is. It's less actiony.
More than $100,000. At the time, lots of folks pointed out how absolutely ludicrous that policy was. One outlet, the Federal News Network, called it, quote, absolutely nuts in a headline. The Daily Kos warned that Noem's DHS
The story is good. It's the gameplay I just like. That's fair.
disaster could wreck FEMA. I mean, we're talking about an agency that routinely spends billions of dollars on disaster relief. $100 grand is pennies in comparison to what FEMA needs to be able to spend quickly.
I like the logs and stuff. Yeah, all those are really fun. I understand like some mini games, like the hacking is hard. It's a very 2005 game. Gameplay is just lacking. No, I understand that. That's completely fair.
It was obvious to anyone that knows anything about disaster relief that requiring the secretary's personal approval would create an
It gets better over the games. I did not like BioShock 2 like at all.
enormous bottleneck and delay in a situation where time is of the essence. That is exactly what happened. According to a new report,
Wait, what's the one where they're in the sky? Is that BioShock 2 or BioShock 3? Whatever one where they're in the on the sky blimps, I didn't like that one at all.
citing multiple
Yeah, I didn't
FEMA
like that
sources,
one.
Secretary Noem did not sign off on deploying the agency.
I love BioShock Infinite. Oh my god. I guess I'm the one with the wrong take today.
agency's urban search and rescue team to Texas until this Monday, more than 3 days after the flood struck. Now, you might be wondering what Secretary Noem was doing over that holiday weekend. It turns out on Sunday, one day before finally signing off on the FEMA funding, as search and rescue efforts were frantically ongoing on the ground there, and the clock.
Everyone has their own gameplay preferences. Yeah, that's fair.
clock was ticking to find survivors, Noam did take the time to go to Instagram to generate some audience engagement. Quote, "Which one do you like for the official governor's portrait to hang in the South Dakota State Capitol? Thank you, David Ewell." Which portrait?
Infinite was the only one I actually played. It's fair that you're going back to the beginning, though, because I got a physical copy of it for the 360. I miss physical copies of stuff.
Of herself should be displayed in her old capital? This portrait of Noam on horseback? Or this portrait of Noam on horseback? Or perhaps this portrait of Noam on horseback?
Those all look like they were done with AI.
When pressed about this reporting on Fox News, Secretary Noam didn't exactly deny it.
CNN is basically got a report accusing you of slowing the process. Would you like to respond to that?
Well, there you go. Fake news. CNN again is absolutely trash what they are doing by saying that, because our Coast Guard, our Border Patrol, BORTAC teams were there immediately. Every single thing I was on, they asked for, we were there.
Well, that's not a denial, right? Because it was the search and rescue teams at issue, and it wasn't that they were denied authorization. It's that it came 3 days late. Noam probably doesn't need to worry about her job. I would worry about my own conscience, actually. But she doesn't need to worry about her job. Her boss thinks she's doing a, how would we call it, a heck of a job, to coin a phrase. In fact, her boss just spoke to NBC News' Kristen Welker about it. We don't have a recording, but here's the transcript of what he said when Welker asked, "There are these reports."
I can't wait for quarantine zones in the last check to come out. What's the last check? I played the demo. It was so good. Or is the whole game Quarantine Zone's the last check? What's it about?
Reports that have come out that Secretary Noam, I guess, had to have signed off on FEMA expenditures, and they may have delayed some of the response. Trump responds, quote, "I don't know anything about it. We were right on time. We were there. In fact, she was the first one I saw on television. She was there right from the beginning, and when she would not have needed anything, she had the right to do it, but she was literally the first person I saw on television that morning when we all woke up and saw this tragedy that took place during the evening, and she was right on the ball. She's done a great job."
The game is where you check people for symptoms of zombie infection. You manage a quarantine zone. Oh, that sounds fun.
She was on TV. So obviously she's doing a great job, right? So good of a job, in fact, that this week she canceled, listen to this, she canceled a $3 million grant that was dedicated to attempting to create a kind of state-of-the-art system that would be able to warn local communities quickly when extreme weather arrives, including in sort of granular detail about which specific areas.
It's planned to release in September. Keep me posted on that. Let me know how it goes.
Might be subject to the highest risk. That is even though just a couple of days ago she conceded that our infrastructure is in need of an upgrade in order to give folks adequate warning ahead of natural disasters.
We know that everybody wants more
I plan on streaming it when it comes out. I will be looking forward to that.
warning time, and that's why we're working to upgrade the technologies that have been neglected by far too long to make sure that families have as much advanced notice as possible.
Well, they didn't have as much advance notice as possible, and the grant that was studying how to do it, you just canceled. The thing is, Secretary Noam fundamentally believes that the federal government, and by extension herself, doesn't manage federal disasters. So, not our problem.
We as a federal government don't manage these disasters. The state does. We come in and support them, and that's exactly what we did here in this situation.
New Jersey Senator Andy Kim is the ranking member of the Homeland Security Subcommittee on Disaster Management. This week, he sent a letter to Secretary Noam demanding the release of her plan for the current hurricane season, and he joins me now. Senator, I want to start with you on that last clip from the Secretary, which is in line with something that the President has articulated. It is a fundamental redirection here. They want to essentially get rid of FEMA and just take the federal government.
They're going to get rid of FIFA, guys. They're coming for your soccer balls.
Out of disaster response. What do you think of that idea?
Well, you see right now what happens when we have incompetence in terms of leadership at the federal level. No state is going to be able to account for every single possible disaster that's out there and have the resources available in that kind of way to deploy quickly. You know, we need experts. We need people that understand how to be able to respond, be able to anticipate, and be able to have the data to be able to engage. And right now you see somebody who's more interested in doing what I call performative governance rather than actually leading,
Andy Kim, at least I have seen Cory Booker do a marathon speech. I haven't seen you do anything, okay? If I'm gonna come down on Cory Booker, I'm gonna come down on you too. You haven't done fuck all. I haven't heard you yapping anywhere about how to protect New Jerseyans. I didn't hear you speaking out about Mahmoud Khalil. Interesting. Suspicious.
taking this step.
Don't know where you are on Zoran.
So I really think that, look, there are definitely reforms that need to be made to FEMA. We experienced some challenges when we came to
That ambulance did not look like it was going to get back out of there.
Superstorm Sandy years ago in New Jersey, but that doesn't mean that we just wipe it all out and completely get rid of it. That would be a disaster for our country, and we're seeing some of that problem unfolding right now.
I got to say, I've covered a lot of natural disasters through the years, Superstorm Sandy being one, and hurricanes and droughts and things like that. It is a little weird that the acting administrator from FEMA has no experience in emergency management, doesn't seem to know that there's a hurricane season, maybe he was joking, maybe not, and has said bupkis while they're gutting the agency in the aftermath of this and as we prepare for hurricane season.
Yeah, and also, where is he right now? Has anyone actually seen him since this disaster in Texas? I mean, we have a completely absent FEMA acting administrator, and he was not joking that he didn't know when hurricane season was. And actually, when I was doing a nomination hearing of another senior leader of DHS, I asked them, when is hurricane season? They didn't know what timetable was. And look, as we're getting into it, I mean, NOAA, our own National Weather Service, is saying that we could expect upwards of 19 named tropical storms, including upwards of 5 Category 3, 4, and 5 hurricanes. This is something that's not theoretical in terms of the worry that my state, New Jersey, and up and down the coast is facing. And when we see this kind of incompetence in the response to what's happening
Even with storms like, was that Maria or Helen that was this past, year with North Carolina? And, most of those states that got hit were very inland, and it happened because it went into the center of, the Gulf of Mexico. And those places got wrecked. And they're not eastern seaboard. So, all states should be prepared for this. We're having, mega storms now.
Texas and the horrible tragedy there, it leaves a lot of people in my state and around this country very nervous about what's to come.
This policy they'd announced, which I think anyone, you don't even have to be in government, have to understand, the bottleneck you're going to create if the one person at the top has to approve grants at this very small level when you're talking about the budget of the agency. I want to read from the letter you wrote about your concerns about this policy as it relates to hurricane season. You say there were reports of FEMA's incomplete hurricane season plan on the cusp of the start of the hurricane season and the slowness in providing the plan to the committee are unsettling. Any such plan must detail how FEMA's life-saving missions will not be hindered by your recent directive, requiring all department obligations over $100,000 be reviewed and approved by your prior to obligation, especially since the memorandum stated your office would take a minimum of 5 days to complete each review. Yeah. This added layer of bureaucracy threatens to delay work that can mean the difference between life and death for disaster victims. Do you think, is this policy still in place as far as you understand it?
As far as I understand it, which is one of the stupidest decisions and policies I've ever heard of, especially when it comes to disaster response. And for an administration that tries to talk about red tape, they are adding red tape here. They are adding bureaucracy. They are making it harder for us to be able to deploy and be able to get resources out, and that's the most serious when it comes to responding to disasters. So yes, I'm very concerned that if a hurricane hits, certainly if it hits my state in New Jersey, are we going to have to be begging Kristi Noem to be able to get off Instagram to be able to actually go and do her job of trying to approve resources that our state in our country needs so badly. This is a terrible idea to bottleneck. We should be able to pre-position resources. We should give freedom for our disaster response experts to be able to handle this. You know, that is why we have this organization. And especially the minimum 5-day notice that it's going to take for them to be able to approve these, you know, that just shows how it's slowing everything down.
That's awful.
NBC's Priscilla Thompson is on the scene for us in Kerrville, Texas. Also with us, Reuters White House correspondent Jeff Mason and former senior FEMA official in the Obama administration, Lars Anderson. Welcome to all of you. Priscilla, with recovery operations ongoing now ahead of the president's visit, where do things stand and what will we see from the president?
Yeah, Alex, still more than 160 people in this county alone still missing. And so the focus today remains on that search effort. At daybreak today, we saw task force going out in boats, beginning that effort again today. And that is undoubtedly something that the president will likely see and hear about a lot today as he arrives around midday. He's expected to meet with first responders and officials, so he will get.
I want to look for that press conference. From
All right, popping back into that round table meeting, those look like local responders. We saw just before we went to break, and we kind of panned away.
Why is it so quiet?
Dan Crenshaw was talking. That's
how you like sat down and had a presser. I'll get back to it.
Get a briefing on those efforts, and then he will likely also hear of some of those heroic stories of first responders who 1 week ago today were out as these floods were rushing in, trying to save as many people as they could. And he's also expected to meet with the families of these victims, families who have lost loved ones.
Hi, Dr. Bear. How are you? Hopefully you got some sleep since the last time I've heard from you.
Families who are still waiting for word of loved ones. And of course, all of this comes as this effort does appear to be becoming.
Steve, what's that? I know, I'll sleep when I'm dead, right? You don't know how much you regret saying that when you have kids. It's like, oh, I'll sleep when I'm dead. Oh boy, I sure feel dead someday. Really nice if I could sleep.
Less of a rescue effort and much more of a recovery effort, with the urgency growing with each passing hour, just for any sort of closure for so many of these families who are still missing loved ones at this point.
So thank you for that. Let's move to you now, Jeff. We have Trump's visit.
15 calls since 2 a.m., 12 a.m. Oof. That sucks. Yeah, definitely no sleep there. Well, I wish you the most peaceful night's sleep when you are able to get it.
Visits to disaster areas. I mean, look, they are often shaped by the political makeup of that area. You'll recall before visiting wildfire ravaged Los Angeles earlier this year, he heaps blame on California's leaders and he threatened to withhold federal aid. It is a stark contrast to this rhetoric about the Texas flood.
I love being a federal first responder. Thank you for your service.
Is Texas. So what are you watching for when he visits?
Yeah, I think you're right to highlight that, Alex. Look, it is a typical job for any president of the United States to go and visit disaster areas after big storms and other natural disasters. President Trump is no different in that he is doing that and doing it today with First Lady Melania Trump. What is different is exactly what you just said.
What is that guy doing? What is he doing with those breaststrokes? He's churning up so much water.
There's politics involved in every bit of presidential travel, but President Trump highlights.
No, I know that. I know he's looking for bodies. But this, especially in shallow water, is going to turn up the dirt. It's not going to help anything. Especially with those big circles, he's creating like a bigger whirlpool. I mean, he was kind of...
And elevates that by directing criticism at Democratic states like California when he went there ahead of his visit or during
I might stream Dune 3 next week. Nice.
the visit, and that is not what he's doing when he's going to Texas.
I gotta remember to set up the bot for Discord for you and Daisy. You guys post so often when you go live, and I'm just like, I should take that off their plate. Let me help them a little.
Texas, of course, is a red state. The area where the storm happened was especially supportive of President Trump in the 2024 election. So I think you'll see and hear nothing but praise. I think you also will not hear him responding in a way that shows any sort of second guessing about the federal response. The other piece, though, that I'm looking for, Alex, to your question is whether or not he shows a little more of an indication.
It's Texans. They wouldn't know how to swim if you gave them tutorial. I don't know if that's appropriate after a bunch of people in Texas probably just drowned to death. But I'm still gonna laugh at it.
On what his plans are for FEMA. The president has said he wants to get rid of FEMA and do so by the end of this year, but he's been hedging a little bit lately and not responding to that question when we've asked him at the White House or when he's traveling. That is a pretty relevant thing right now, given the importance of FEMA in responding to this disaster and many others. So I'll be watching to see if he shows any more indication of what he plans.
I know I'm like armchair critiquing some of these things. I remember a few days ago when they were like chainsawing a bunch of like heavy trees and stuff, and I'm like, man, that is so loud. Like, how are you gonna be able to hear anything like within that radius? And even like, okay, think about like the edge of like the sound line of the chainsaw, right? How are you gonna be able to hear anything out there? Because like sometimes when people are trapped under debris and shit, it's hard to make noise. You know? That's why I commended them for the horses. I was like, yeah, hell yeah, horses are nice and quiet. That's a good call. They can get over great terrain. But like the chainsaws, I don't know. I know I shouldn't like critique responders. I shut the fuck up, if anything. But I'm like, there could be a better way.
Has to do with that.
Yeah, we'll be watching that as well. And I ask you, Lars, a bit about that because, yes, he wants to get rid of it or at minimum reduce the profile and the budget for FEMA. Based on what you're learning about the operations in Texas, is FEMA doing anything differently in this response?
No, I mean, I think FEMA's doing what it always does is, you know.
Why you aren't trying to hear the victim. That's fair. It's search and rescue, not listen and rescue. But what if somebody's like calling out for help? I don't know. I've been in the woods a lot, and when you're like, you need to find something, or like you're hunting, or like you got lost. Sometimes it's good. Stop and listen. And if you got a chainsaw going off near you, you're not going to listen. I'm not saying those things may or may not have happened. Middle of nowhere, Virginia. I'm just saying.
You know, show up and try and help when they can. I think what's really important, what's really interesting to note, though, is Texas is probably one of those states that is most prepared for the disasters. It's one of the states that's well funded. They have a good emergency manager on the ground, and yet they still need this federal response. They need millions, probably billions of dollars of help from the federal government. So if you take a state like Texas, which is ready to deal with these types of disasters, and you look at smaller states that don't have the capacity, it really shows the importance of FEMA and what FEMA does, and the whole federal response.
Lars, here's a new Homeland Security.
Trees, there's trees. I feel like the only time I've seen trees bend that way, like, was after Mount St. Helens. Like, oh my God. And they're huge. Most search and rescue teams use dogs and thermal imaging cameras. Sound is useful, but easy to look. I know most teams do, but a lot of these people are just like their kids looking for their parents and vice versa. That's more of what I'm talking about. A lot of this is local volunteers. FEMA apparently didn't sign off on stuff. Kristi Noem didn't sign off on FEMA until Monday. And I don't know how long it took regular local teams to. I know a guy from Tennessee came down with his horses. They're part of like a rescue mission. And I commended them on that. I was like, horses are smart. Horses are great.
Security policy, it requires Secretary Noem to sign off on any agency spending that exceeds $100,000. NBC News' Kristen Welker asked the president about reports that this may have delayed the federal response in Texas. And he said, quote, "I don't know anything about it. We were right on time. We were there. In fact, she was the first one I saw on television." But could that Noem $100,000 policy, could it slow things down during a critical response like this?
I do think it can. You've seen reports where the search and rescue teams took longer than they normally would to get to Texas. I don't know if that would have made that much of a difference in terms of finding people, but I think it's important to give emergency managers the ability to kind of
already has slowed down. Nightmare. It's so sad.
To make decisions on their own or pre-deploy. That's what, after post-Katrina, those are some of the reforms that were put in place to allow emergency managers to put assets in place and really get teams off the ground. You never want to be late in a response like this. And so I think there'll be some lessons learned from this tragedy, and hopefully they'll make some changes moving forward.
Well, let's talk about that, Priscilla, because
a lot of my friends in FEMA who are in Texas were sitting on their asses. They had to wait for the green light. That's so gross. Sucks so much, because I feel like if you want to do a job in that section, you must care a lot about wanting to help people. And to sit there and watch all of this suffering and these locals, regular mom and pops, go out there and have to look at friends and family while you sit there waiting for the green light, I think that sucks. That fucking sucks.
As we have also learned in 2024, the Kerr County officials specifically warned a flood event was likely in the next year. Can you tell us more about that and whether any action was taken?
Yeah, Alex, and we know that they also talked about flood warning systems, but they actually decided to defer that conversation and any action on that until the plan was updated. And sadly, these floodwaters rushed in before there was an opportunity to do that. And that is despite that 2024 mitigation plan saying, quote, every jurisdiction
sitting there with all the actual rescue equipment and training, watching families search for nothing but a flashlight. Yeah, that's exactly what it is, and it's horrifying. And my heart goes out to those FEMA volunteers / employees, whatever, I don't know what they're called. Because like that's tough, A lot of people are gonna have trauma from the event, and it's not just, it's everyone. It's very limited in the scope.
can expect to experience some type of flooding that may or may not meet the definition of a 100-year or 500-year event on a more regular basis. The local planning team determined it is likely that Kerr County and the participating jurisdictions will experience a flood event in the next year. And so definitely questions around this. We know that the Texas legislature is going into a special session later this month, and hearings are going to be held on the entirety of the response here. And we know that at least one of those hearings is going to happen right here in Kerrville because
the climate change is a hoax. I know, right? Sometimes I really feel like we all collectively owe Al Gore an apology. We did see on here, not yesterday, but the day before, Bill Nye the Science Guy and a couple of other officials were invited onto news stations, and they, not just scientists, but like also like people in journalism and stuff like that, were on some of the news stations. Bill Nye the Science Guy straight up pulled the Constitution out of his pocket and was like, this is my favorite part. It's Article 5, Section 2, and it talks about how Congress should the arts and the sciences. And then and he also started talking about how yeah, climate change is real. This is what's going to happen when we have, human man-made issues. And we should expect the once in 100-year storms to be every year. And when we need to acknowledge that we need to do something about this rather than just saying, oh, it's a once in a lifetime thing. It's almost like everybody's, how people talk after school shootings, and then they have one side that's being like, oh, we can't politicize a trauma, and then you have the other side that's being like, we need some reforms to save lives. And then that cycle keeps happening. I feel like that's happening with climate change, and it's very annoying.
Because legislators want to hear directly from the people impacted, hear their frustrations, and begin to better understand what went wrong and how they can ensure that something like this doesn't happen again.
I'm tired of these once-in-a-lifetime events every month. Yeah, at some point, people need to acknowledge it, and I have started seeing pushback on major news organizations for their guests. They'll straight up be like, no, these are happening every month. We need to do something about this. We need to acknowledge that we've done this. And I haven't seen people talk like that in a very long time. All right, my bones hurt.
Lars, what kind of prevention measures could be implemented in, say, a 12-month time frame or less that could have really helped this situation?
I mean, I think when you have situations like this, warning people about the potentials of the dangers is really critical. So that's not only the potential of these alarms that they're talking about, but really a robust text message program. A couple days ago here in D.C., we had a major storm, and I got an alert on my phone saying, tornado warning. I think it's really important to.
I hope the next once-in-a-lifetime event is contact with aliens. I hope the next once-in-a-lifetime event is world peace. Okay, I hope we get to that point. I hope no other things happen except for that.
To have those types of things in place so that you get the most information out to people as soon as you can.
Yet, would that also include not extending the footprint of a camp into a floodplain, as has been alleged was done with Camp Mystic?
I don't know the details on exactly where Camp Mystic was located within the flood zone, but I think it's something people need to look at. I read in reports that they had an emergency plan approved a couple days before this tragedy occurred.
They did.
And so, it makes me wonder I think people really need to take a look at where these camps are located, where these facilities are located, and really take the flooding seriously. People don't think about flooding as dangerous sometimes, but it's a huge problem.
They will now. Yeah, they will now. Jeff, I want to ask you a question, but let everyone know what we're seeing there. There is Marine One. It has landed there at Joint Base Andrews, where the.
I'm going to switch to the next news story, but I'm going to run inside and use the restroom. I'll be right back. I may or may not have some.
So as we mentioned, President Trump will depart for the Texas Hill Country a few minutes from now, where he will meet with first responders and the families impacted by last Friday's catastrophic flooding. This comes as Democratic lawmakers are raising concerns about the federal response in the wake of the storm and questioning how the administration's cuts to FEMA and the National Weather Service may impact future disasters. Joining us now, Democratic Congressman Jared Moskowitz of Florida. And Congressman Moskowitz previously served as Florida's Director of Emergency Management. So I wanted to get your insights. I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts on not just the response to the catastrophe in Texas, but also the attitudes and changes and cuts toward these federal programs.
Yeah, first, let me say, obviously, the devastation out of Texas is on a level of, heartbreak. You're talking 120 people, 36 kids, and a lot of people are still missing. I mean, this is one of the worst floods in modern time. And so, obviously, our heart breaks for the community that's experienced this. I mean, but at the same time, this is what government is for. Government is supposed to be there in your time of need. Government is supposed to help when there are these major disasters that are over the capacity of local governments. That's what FEMA is for. And the reports coming out that FEMA didn't show up with swift water rescue crews for 72 hours is a total deviation from how FEMA worked when I was the Director of Emergency Management in Florida. I would have been woken up by my regional administrator in the middle of the night. By the way, Florida right now doesn't have a regional administrator. That position's empty because they were forced out, along with over 20% of FEMA's workforce. There would have been Black Hawk helicopters that would have been moved by FEMA for search and rescue. They would have had Task Force 1 and Task Force 2 that would have been mobilized within 24 hours on the site. After 72 hours, unfortunately, search and rescue, them showing up then is not as needed at that critical moment.
So you're describing what would have happened had this been under your jurisdiction. How would you describe the response in Texas?
Well, Kristi Noem doesn't know what she's doing. She has no idea what she is doing when it comes to FEMA. Look, FEMA needed reform. The emergency management industry has been saying that for a long period of time. I have a bill with Byron Donalds, who's running for governor of Florida, to take FEMA out of Homeland because we want FEMA to be faster. And Homeland is a giant bureaucracy with 22 other agencies. They're disabusing FEMA, making it doing the grants of all the other agencies within Homeland. And so it needed reform, but that's not what the secretary did. What she did is she broke it. Okay, and she broke it on purpose so that when it fails this summer, she can say, oh, see, we told you FEMA doesn't work. But I actually don't.
EW systems, dams, disaster relief stations and training, raised embankments, prevention of local plant and tree life on the coast of large water sources, quick response teams, collaboration with FEMA and federal agencies, increased funding and recruitment for local responders, more swift water rescue teams, increased Coast Guard, National Guard. But Doge said, nuh-uh, so I guess we're all fucked. Yeah. Yep. This sucks. This sucks. Also, I made homemade bread pudding. It's okay. I probably would have put it in a different size pan. It's a little dry, but it's good.
I don't think people in the West Wing know how bad FEMA is, know how bad what she's done to FEMA. She's
more like bread stuffing than like bread pudding. Good. We got 2 giant loaves, like French loaves of bread from the food bank, and they were in like that, like the ShopRite wrapping paper, like the supermarket wrapping paper where it's like plastic on the top and the bottom. And I didn't put away right away, so I was like, fuck it. And I made French toast for dinner tonight, and I had a bunch of leftovers. And the same things in bread pudding are basically the same things in French toast. So I made French toast, and I made bread pudding with the leftovers. So it's not bad. It's just, I would like it more moist. I like my bread pudding more creamy.
Appointed an interim administrator with zero emergency management experience. That was on purpose because she doesn't want anything to happen unless it comes to her desk. She's actually made FEMA slower, less efficient. So much for the E and Doge for what she's done to FEMA. And it's going to cost lives, and it's going to hurt red states more than anybody else. Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee, I mean, Kentucky, Kansas, places that have tornadoes. I mean,
Where is this guy? I'm looking at his bookshelf, and then the TV, and then this. I'm like, is that a reptile cage or like an aquarium? What is that? I'm so nosy.
this is not good for states that would go bankrupt without FEMA, and they've slowed down the reimbursement process to the slowest it's ever.
It's a chill little man cave. It's very minimalistic, but I need to know what is in the tank. It doesn't look like a fish tank because I don't see like water or like, I don't know. But it's reflective. It's reflecting the ceiling light. You can get in it.
Ever been. Well, when you slow down reimbursement, you slow down resources. That means cities and counties slow down.
Yeah, it's definitely a glass cube of some kind. Gotta be a reptile tank. Oh, wait. Unless... I don't know now. I'm so confused.
Their decisions because they don't know if they're going to get reimbursed, and they don't have the funds to do major disaster cleanup. So this is a total disaster going into hurricane season. Let's just pray we get lucky and we don't have a bad hurricane season. But if we do, I think you could see a Michael Brown moment.
So, Congressman, you took me exactly where I wanted to take the next line of questioning is hurricane.
Today, multiple Democratic lawmakers, including some from Texas, are formally demanding answers from the administration about the impact of budget cuts and DHS policies on the government's ability to respond to the devastating
Saw him on somewhere else earlier.
floods. Texas Democratic Congressman Greg Casar is one of them, chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and he joins me now. Congressman, it's good to have you on the program again. What are the specific concerns, both that you've heard raised, but also the questions you want answered?
Texans deserve answers. If we want to both respect the dead, have government accountability, and keep people safe moving forward, we can't let any mistakes be swept under the rug. And so I, as a member of the Oversight Committee, am working alongside our ranking member, the top Democrat, Robert Garcia, to demand an independent investigation into what went right. We should be thankful to the first responders that saved lives, but also what went wrong. I'm especially concerned with the reports coming out from whistleblowers at FEMA that DHS Secretary Noem waited 72 hours to approve search and rescue from FEMA. A request like that, you shouldn't have to think about it for even 72 seconds, much less 72 hours.
We have also not seen any public appearance or press conference from the director of FEMA, David Richardson. He's kind of the...
Not even doing above the head like I was doing. He's straight up, oh my God, I'm sorry. I have so many problems with this.
Public appearance or press conference from the director of FEMA.
That movement that close to the bottom is not going to help you find anything, especially as you move forward.
David Richardson, he's kind of the interim here since the flooding happened. Do you know why that is, and is it a problem?
We deserve transparency at every level of government, local, state, and federal. And I'm very concerned that the Trump administration has clearly said that they want to get rid of FEMA as we know it. And the American people and people in Texas especially deserve to know if the cuts at FEMA are impacting our preparedness for the next flood or the next fire, and what impact they had here in Central Texas. Right now, where I'm sitting in Travis County, we had far too many people die, and then just, of course, up the road, what you just saw in Kerrville, is devastating. This is not about politics. This is about accountability for what just happened and making sure we keep people safe, because Texans and Americans are facing deadlier fires, deadlier freezes, and deadlier floods year after year after year. And Americans deserve to know whether these massive cuts at the National Weather Service and these failures at FEMA are making things worse.
There's also a key question, which is whatever money there is, who should be spending it, right? Because back in May, the Texas governor, Greg Abbott, said FEMA is, and I'm quoting him here, slow and clunky. He said states have proven that we can move more nimbly, more swiftly, more effectively. What do you think is that balance? I mean, is it less?
Hey, sorry, why does Greg Abbott like verbs? Verbs specifically about things both politically and physically. Normally I wouldn't make fun of somebody in a wheelchair, but that man, hell has a special place for him. That's all I'm gonna say. Hades has. Somebody's gonna straight down the stairs.
FEMA, more state? How do you see it as someone who lives in a state that has seen more than its share of natural disasters?
Well, I've seen far too many failures from Governor Abbott during natural disasters. Just a few years ago, here we had Winter Storm Uri, where people were dying in a freeze while some of Governor Abbott's own donors were making millions and millions of dollars.
Oh my
jacking
God,
up.
wait. I totally forgot to tell you guys. I found out the other day that Ted Cruz was on vacation during another natural disaster in his state from The Onion. I lost my mind. I was doom scrolling YouTube content for the meme, and I go by and I see Ted Cruz assures victims of the flood that he's going to ask for a refund for his trip. And I was like, no. I was like, he was on another vacation? Someone stop this man from leaving the country. Every time he goes on vacation, a bunch of his constituents die. Every time.
Electricity prices. We need to ask real questions about why the state of Texas rejected grants to our communities for flood warning systems. And right now, the special session that the governor has called, I wish it was really about flooding, but what he has made his real priority in there is out of cycle redistricting, essentially doing Trump's bidding and trying to get even more gerrymandering in Texas to stop there being accountability for the Trump administration. I think we should be putting.
Ted was happy on vacation, as his response for not immediately returning to his state was to say, well, the vacation was planned. How does that man keep winning? Although, to be fair, I had people from Texas in my chat that didn't know that Ted Cruz was also Cancun Cruz. Like, so they were like just finding out that, like, oh, that's that guy that left for Cancun when a bunch of our family members died. Like, some people didn't know that was him, and I had to be like, yes, this is the guy that was like, hey, I'm in Cancun, leave me alone, bro.
More money towards flooding, but we now have a governor that instead of having a special session really about these floods, he's making it about politics. This shouldn't be about politics. It should be about getting answers. And whether it is a Democratic or Republican administration, we should be getting answers about what went wrong at the state, local, and federal levels.
Let me ask you big picture, because you touched on this. The number and severity of natural disasters continues to increase all across the country. In fact, Texas got hit so far this year more than any other state. You see those numbers, California, Oklahoma, and Washington, 2, 3, and 4 there.
Wait, what are all those natural disasters? I feel like this is like school shootings. I swear to fucking God. This is like worse than school shootings because it's happening in multiple states. across the country in the same amount of time. Oh my god, this is so bad. I didn't like I'm tuned into the news, obviously. But I can only be so tuned in. I did not realize this many happened so far in 2025. Either A, because I'm just not attuned enough to local news, or B, there's just so much else going on. Oh my god. I'm like, that's wild. That's fucking wild.
Only a handful of states are immune so far this year. Is there any sense of urgency?
What do you mean immune? What do you mean immune?
That you detect on Capitol Hill to deal with that? We know that with this administration and this majority, climate change and some of the programs that were put into effect by the Biden administration may be off the table. But do you think things like this in a red state could change the equation at all?
It better, because look, I think it is extremely dangerous and disheartening that funds have been completely slashed to help prevent climate change and even worse, disasters. But what I just am trying and struggling to understand here is why the Trump administration has cut funding for projects to protect us from disasters happening right now. Just up the street from where I'm sitting right now here in Southeast Travis County, the Trump administration cut a grant that the Biden administration had already given to prevent flooding in the most flood-ravaged part of the Austin area, just really close here to where the floods happened in Kerrville. And so what we're experiencing, seeing from the Trump administration is not just climate change denialism, but straight up natural disaster denialism. So that's why we're asking for this kind of accountability and transparency in these floods, because when you have severe staffing shortages at the National Weather Service, when you have somebody in charge of FEMA who says she wants to get rid of FEMA as we know it, and then you have a devastating flood like this one, I think it's a disservice to the victims for us to not ask the hard questions. If we wait a few more weeks, we know sometimes the news cycle could just move on, and we cannot forget these children.
That's part of the reason why it's like a week later and I'm still talking about it. It is tough for me to talk about this because I have children and I do worry about them dying in all the horrific ways that I have seen children die since I've grown up. This is a very hard topic for me to talk about, but I feel like it's important because these are things that are going to impact everyone's state, not just Texas, not just California, but New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, North Carolina, South Carolina, I skipped Virginia, Georgia, Florida, like all the way up to Maine. And not only that, but we saw with this last hurricane, we saw hurricanes go so far inland and absolutely destroy communities that are still unable to piece themselves back together yet. And so, it's something that is important to talk about, but my God, there's so much other news going on.
And these seniors and these everyday neighbors that survived this traumatizing incident, and we especially can't forget those that did not survive.
As the
I
search
drink
for the missing
and I know
continues,
things.
Bet 202 would like you to drink something.
Thank you. I started my fitness YouTube vlog today and I did some yoga. My first one of these. I have to drink 4. Like here. Oh, we're doing pretty good.
In Kerr County, records reviewed by NBC5 Investigates raise new questions about whether local officials could have used the nation's wireless emergency alert system to better warn people in the path of the flood.
Every time that video gets me. The people in the house like walking out to their porch and their house is floating away. Like, what do you even do at that point?
Along with our partners at NBC News, we scoured a FEMA archive of cell phone alerts sent through FEMA's Integrated Public Alert and Warning System, or IPAWS, a system many local counties, including Kerr County, are authorized to use to issue warnings to all cell phones in a designated area. It's the same system used to send Amber Alerts. The FEMA message archive shows as the water began rising in Kerr County on July 4th, the National Weather Service did send a flood warning to cell.
At that point, you hope the coasties arrive quick. I don't even know what that would be like for someone living in like the middle of Texas to like fathom.
Phones as early as 1:14 a.m. But Weather Service forecasters cannot issue instructions on whether to evacuate or wait for rescue. Those messages are up to county or city officials. And the FEMA archive shows Kerr County did not send any wireless alerts through IPAWS on the 4th when the flooding began. Some families say they did receive what's called a Code Red alert from Kerr County that's similar to an IPAWS message. But Code Red only reaches people who signed up for alerts.
Most of the people I talked to didn't even know what Code Red was.
Lewis and Leslie Kasurik shared a screenshot of the Kerr County Dispatch Code Red they received, saying major flooding continues. But the Kasuriks say that message didn't hit their phones until after 10 a.m. By then, one flood gauge in Kerr County shows the river had already risen about 30 feet. And the Kasuriks had taken this photo showing roads in their neighborhood were already cut off.
I'm mad because,
Wow.
you know, like I told another lady, how many lives do we have to lose in order for them to fix the system? It's broken.
Kerr County has used the more wide-reaching IPAWS system to warn of flooding in the past. Last year, on July 23rd, the archive shows the county sent an IPAWS alert saying the Guadalupe River was expected to rise an additional 4 feet, telling people to avoid the river and move assets.
The problem with these phone alerts is that they don't have the same emergency feeling as the old school EAS alarms. Yeah, and apparently they were supposed to like install sirens and shit and like river gauges that would set off like things, but it got tied up in the this is too expensive. We'll talk about this later in the budget. So also apparently there was like this thing that like when the certain alerts come out, like you know how sometimes on TVs you'll get like the emergency alerts or the test signal? It's supposed to be like that for like ham radios. At least that's how I understood it. And it's supposed to send something out, but no one at the camp had cell phones. And the only people that had walkie-talkies were like the owner and the other head owner. Or the owner and like another high up person.
Sets to higher ground immediately. So why no county IPAWS alert before the flood this time? NBC5 Investigates reached out to Kerr County Judge Rob Kelly and Emergency Management Coordinator William Thomas, but they did not immediately respond to questions. At a news conference last week, Kelly was asked why children's camps along the river were not evacuated.
I can't answer that. I don't know.
He said the county never expected water would rise so fast.
We didn't know this flood was coming. Rest assured, no one knew this kind of flood was coming.
Researchers who studied the IPAWS system tell us communities sometimes struggle to decide when to issue cell phone alerts, who should send those alerts, and what the messages should say. A struggle stemming in part, they say, from a lack of standardized nationwide policies.
There is no required training. There's no certification process currently within IPAWS.
Emergency alert researcher Jeanette Sutton explained it's up to each local government to write its own policies. She says that's created differences in how effectively the system is used in each community.
We need a lot of training, and we need the resources to help people to get trained.
Sutton's team at the University at Albany.
Good thing we took away those kids' phones. At least they weren't stuck on their phones all day. Yeah.
Recently helped FEMA develop a tool local emergency managers can use to
it seems like even if they had their phones, a lot of them wouldn't have found out.
Plan more effective messages before disaster strikes.
They are generally facing a blank text box that says insert message here. And you can imagine that in a situation where there's a lot of stress and uncertainty, that writing a message from scratch is very difficult.
In a statement to NBC5, FEMA said its IPAWS office encourages and supports practicing and exercising. and said the agency makes training tools available, enabling public safety officials to gain confidence using iPause.
It is really important to get it right when people's lives are on the line.
Sutton says cell phone alerts can be critical, especially in places like Kerr County, which doesn't have a siren warning system. But she says counties should also amplify alerts using tools like social media or even knocking on doors, as cell phone service is sometimes spotty in rural areas. On the morning of the July 4th floods, the Kerr County Sheriff's Department did use its Facebook account, posting messages around 5:30 a.m. warning of dangerous flooding, urging people to move to higher ground. Alerts that could reach social media users awake at the time, but would not sound a cell phone alert like an iPause message. At a news conference Wednesday, the sheriff said the county would look
Who's got their local county Facebook page notifications on? I need to know.
into whether evacuation orders should have been issued.
Sometimes evacuations is not the safest. Sometimes it's better to shelter in place.
And he pledged to examine why cell phone alerts did not happen sooner.
Those are important questions. We will answer those questions.
Questions with answers that might help other communities face the next disaster. Scott Friedman, NBC5 Investigates.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on.
Joining me now, Jeremy Edwards, former FEMA Deputy Director.
Oh, I don't want to watch anymore. Like, not interviews, but like roundtable people. I want to move on from the Texas floods for a little while. Talk about something else that's going on in Texas.
What was once
Divorce.
Ken Paxton's private life is now very much spilling out into the public after his wife announced their divorce to the world in a dramatic post on X that went viral in an instant. Now, Paxton is the Texas Attorney General, a Trump ally, and candidate for Senate. He's running in a Republican primary. His soon-to-be now ex-wife, Angela, is also a politician. She's a state senator in Texas. They have been a power couple for years. Now it is very much a power struggle over a lot of things. Ken Paxton paints the divorce that is pending now as the byproduct of our politics, chalking it up to the pressures of countless political attacks and public scrutiny. Angela Paxton hints at something different, explaining that she, quote, filed for divorce.
Wait, I want to read the whole tweet. Today, after 38 years of marriage, I filed for divorce on biblical grounds. Reconciliation. Wait, there's something missing there. But in the light of recent discoveries, I do not believe it honors God or is loving to myself, my children, or Ken to remain in this marriage. I move forward with complete confidence that God is always working everything together for the good of those who love him and who are called according to his purpose.
On biblical grounds, and that following, quote, recent discoveries, she does not believe that her marriage honors God. Our reporters are back. Nia, I'm going to start with you because there's so many things to unpack here. But
Are we going to see the divorce filings? Are those going to get leaked?
Just kind of
gonna run, gotta call. Be safe. Good luck.
Table set for our viewers, Nia, on the fact that this is a couple who has stuck together through other political storms that Ken Paxton was involved with, including in an attempt to impeach him. She was very much by his side. Things are different now. Let's start there.
Well, listen, I mean, even if you look back at the impeachment, there were allegations during that impeachment about extramarital affairs, one in particular. And so she clearly either decided to stick by her husband after that, or maybe they weren't true. It's unclear. But this isn't new news about Ken Paxton. It is new news in the context of this race that's going to pit him against John Cornyn. Polls so far have shown that Ken Paxton, who is sort of the Trump of Texas, that he's in the lead, double digits according to some polls. And so what does this news do? On the one hand, he's trying to make himself even more Trump.
I do have a note to add. Why does a divorce affect how people vote for somebody? I don't remember the last time that ever mattered. Nothing has mattered since 2016.
Video shows federal agents deploying what appears to be tear gas canisters into a crowd of protesters at a farm in Ventura County, California. The incident took place at a farm on Laguna Road near Camarillo.
Evangelicals, they may think it matters, maybe. Do you think they're still bothered by it? Because, like, Trump has been divorced, like, 3 times. And, like, I don't know, they don't seem bothered by that. That's just kind of like what I was like factoring in. It doesn't matter to evangelicals. Yeah, I was like, what? I don't feel like divorce has really been a thing in a while. That requires standards. Oh, fuck.
Mayor of Oxnard, Louise MacArthur, referred to the location as, quote, a marijuana cultivator in a post on Facebook. Cannabis cultivation is legal in the state of California. The Ventura...
Yeah, and it looks like a legit farm. This doesn't look like an illegal farm in the middle of bumfuck nowhere that they used to set on fire in the 70s. Like, this looks like a legitimate farm. Are you kidding me?
The County Fire Department said they responded to calls of people having breathing problems in the area. A witness told CNN he was tear gassed during the incident, causing his eyes to burn. White House border czar Tom Homan told reporters, quote, they can protest all they want, but they cross the line, they're going to be...
Point out bumfuck nowhere on the map, please. I believe I saw a specific torching of cannabis by people in like camouflage somewhere in California, but it was in like kind of like a field area, like in the middle of like, I want to say corn. So wherever you can grow corn in California, that's where bumfuck nowhere is.
To be arrested. Homan did not provide further details about the operation. It's unclear if any arrests were made during the incident. CNN reached out to U.S. Customs and Border Protection for comment and was instructed to contact ICE.
So breaking overnight, a standoff between federal immigration agents and protesters outside a cannabis farm in California. The raid happened in Ventura County. The video shows agents clashing with protesters, deploying what appears to be tear gas into the crowd. The fire department said that it responded to reports of people suffering with breathing trouble. Here's border czar Tom Homan speaking on Fox News about it.
People are welcome to protest. They have their First Amendment rights, grew up, but they can't cross that line. They can't impede us from doing our job. That's a felony. They certainly can't put hands on an agent. That's a felony. So what happened in California is just another example of protesters becoming criminals. ICE agents are simply enforcing the law that members of Congress enacted.
And we are now learning that the FBI is offering a $50,000 reward for information on a man who they say appeared to fire a gun toward the immigration officers. CNN's Veronica Miracle is following this one for us. What's the latest you're picking up?
Well, Kate, we're learning this morning.
I imagine a town in Kansas or Wyoming being called bumfuck nowhere. That's a good point. So bumfuck, I feel like bum is more of a southern word than a northern word. So I'm going to say Georgia, upstate Georgia, somewhere between like Tennessee and Kentucky. That makes sense.
Morning that 10 people under the age of 18 were found at that farm, 8 of them
I imagine any state that has like 2 or 3 House reps max is bumfuck nowhere.
unaccompanied. And so now the Customs and Border Protection Commissioner Rodney Scott says this is also turning into a child labor violations case. A spokesman for Homeland Security said that they were conducting criminal warrants at Glass House Farms. There's a marijuana facility. They had 2 different locations, and there were raids happening at both of those locations. And then what happened?
Wyoming is now bumfuck nowhere. 3 total reps confirmed. Oh, wow.
As protesters quickly descended upon those farms when word got out. This lasted for hours. There were people who were well into the night being taken away, detained. We don't know at this hour how many people have been arrested. But here's what protesters had to say about what unfolded at the scene.
They started throwing pepper balls, tear gas, smoke, everything, just trying to disperse us because they're scared. They know that we're gonna push back against it.
We're here united. We're not letting ICE agents in. We're not letting ICE agents out. We've been trying to block in since we're not giving them what they want.
And this devolved very quickly. It got out of control. The FBI says that a man is they're looking for information for a man who may have fired a gun.
Alaska has 1, Delaware has 1, and now I'm considering them nowhere, LOL, too.
Towards officers, they're offering a $50,000 reward for information leading to the arrest of this person. And there were all kinds of chaos. At one point, protesters actually blocked the entrances into the farm. And so there was a massive standoff. This went well into the night. We're still waiting to learn exactly how many people were arrested, but we did see from aerial footage busloads of people being taken away. We saw people lined up, detained at the facilities. So as soon as we get more information, we'll bring it to you. Kate?
Yeah, there's a lot more to learn about this situation.
Delaware is sandwiched between all these populated centers. They get a pass. Yep, Idaho with 2, Maine with 2. Yep, still nowhere.
How it unfolded, why they were going to that cannabis facility as you were laying out.
Montana with 2, Nebraska with 3, North Dakota was 1. So a lot of places have bumfuck nowhere.
More to come. Hopefully we'll learn more this morning. Veronica, thank you so much.
We begin this morning in Southern California, where 2 massive ICE raids targeting farm workers turned violent. Federal agents were seen blasting what appeared to be tear gas canisters at protesters. Demonstrators.
Rhode Island has 2, but they get the pass. Wyoming has the least number of people. They are bumfuck. Same with New Hampshire. Okay, Wyoming is bumfuck nowhere.
Try to block ICE agents
Wyoming,
from arresting workers by throwing rocks. And all of this comes days after President Trump said there would be no amnesty for migrant farm workers. In a statement to CBS News, the Department of Homeland Security defended these raids, saying, quote, "Our brave officers will continue to enforce the law." CBS News immigration reporter Camila Montoya Galvez brings us more details now on what happened exactly. Camila, good morning to you. We don't usually see incidents like this. How were protesters able to mobilize ahead of time?
Good morning, Errol. What we know is that federal immigration agents at Customs and Border Protection and ICE together collectively raided this cannabis farm in Southern California that officials are now alleging, Errol, was hiring and employing people who are in the country unlawfully and who are not legally authorized to work in the U.S. It is unclear how many workers were actually arrested, but according to Customs...
Guys, they're going after the weed. They're coming after the weed. That is what's going to be next, okay? They're going to take away your weed. They're going to take away your porn. They're going to take away everything fun. Dancing, all of it.
And Border Protection Commissioner Rodney Scott, at least 10 of the workers were children. About 8 of them or 6 of them were unaccompanied minors. And the facility, according to the commissioner, is now being investigated for potential child labor violations. The Department of Homeland Security.
We be living in the town from Footloose. Where's Kevin Bacon? I'm thinking like Pleasantville, actually. But Footloose is another good example, too. Outside Delaware, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine, and Hawaii, the rule holds, but weird how they all are close to an ocean or part of the OG 13 colony. I forgot so many states were carved out of Mass. Yeah.
Security, as you noted in their statement, said that agents had federal criminal warrants to conduct this operation, not just administrative immigration warrants that are typically used by ICE and CBP agents to arrest undocumented individuals.
It's kind of funny though. They're shooting the gas canisters at the crowd, but the wind's headed back at them.
It is really important to note that this quickly got out of hand, of course, as you saw the Department of Homeland Security agents deploying tear gas. You saw the clashes between the protesters and the federal agents. In one instance, it appears that one man was shooting some sort of a gun at federal law enforcement agents. That case is now
Oh my
being
god, they're just pelting this and they can't go because there's a guy on the bike. Well known, the cops don't hire the brightest.
investigated by the FBI. So this is really, Errol, the latest flashpoint in the growing tensions between federal immigration authorities and
there's
many
so many things
communities
you could do
across
right
the country
there.
as the second Trump administration aggressively expands immigration arrests across the country.
Yeah,
mean,
this
with the
footage
bike.
out of Ventura County is just
Vermont doesn't get a pass. It's like driving through the Pine Barrens at all parts up there. They can probably have bumfuck nowhere in their city. Vermont seems really pretty if it's like the Pine Barrens.
remarkable. What about Governor Gavin Newsom? He is a contender, possibly, for the Democrats to run for president.
Stop talking about Gavin Newsom in the 2028 elections. If we literally boil everything he's doing down as he's doing it for his political run, we are gonna get nothing fucking done.
At some point, what is he saying?
I don't care about
Well, Governor
2028. I
Gavin
care about
Newsom
now.
is strongly denouncing the operations in Southern California, Errol, saying that the Trump administration is unnecessarily targeting migrant workers and also separating families. He cited a video in which a child appeared to say that his mother had been arrested by ICE, and the child appeared to be weeping because of that. And this is part of broader concerns from Democrats like Governor Newsom that the administration's crackdown, Errol, is extending well beyond the dangerous criminals and gangsters that the administration promised to expel from the country.
I mean, we knew that. Like, we all knew that, right? Like, we collectively all knew when he said I was going to get rid of criminals, he meant actually I'm going to get rid of people of color. I feel like I was aware of that. I feel like we as a community were pretty aware of that.
But I do obviously have to underscore that while the administration has said that it will target people who are in the country illegally and also have criminal records, it has always said repeatedly, Errol, that anyone who is here illegally is now fair game to be arrested and deported from the country.
Wow, I know we'll continue to track all of this throughout the day. Camila Montoya-Galvez, thank you.
Joining me now, NBC's Ryan Nobles has been reporting on these raids in California. Also here, Nick Miroff, staff writer at The Atlantic, who spoke to more than a dozen current and former ICE agents about morale problems inside the agency. It's good to have both of you.
Yeah, wait. Yeah, but they managed to elect Bernie, so they got some common sense. They do love their guns a lot up there. Well, and that's the thing too, is like Bernie has voted for like certain gun things because that's what his constituents want him to vote for. Hampshire also wants to all the time. So does Texas.
You, Ryan, what else can you tell us about this cannabis farm raid in California?
Well, this was a massive facility, Chris. 5.5 million acres in all indoors in Southern California, in the town of Camarillo. And what happened is
Funny how the further left and right you go, it hooks back over. Yeah, that's like the saying. It's like sometimes you go so far left, you get your guns back.
that these ICE agents descended upon this facility. The folks at the Glass House Farms were unaware of it at the time. They did say that they fully complied with the requests by the agents to enter into the facility and look for people who they were targets of this raid. Listen to how one of the workers at the facility described how it went down.
They just went in without expecting. There was a lot of people. There was just a lot of, like, if they were on war or something, they came, the guns were drawn and everything. They came, like, what else can do? We got surrounded. They closed everything. The whole cars went in. The whole passway we could run. They were blocked off.
And of course, this raid led to a massive protest in and around the facility, clashes between protesters and the ICE agents and other law enforcement that were there on the scene. The law enforcement responding with tear gas. And then there was even one protester that's accused of firing a shot in the direction of law enforcement. The FBI right now issuing a reward for the for anyone that could find and help them locate the person responsible for firing that shot. But Chris, at the very least, this shows just how high tensions are right now, particularly in this part of the country around
that chick had a leaf blower.
Facilities like this farm, which President Trump has said that they're working to try and find some sort of carve out in this immigration enforcement crackdown that would allow these farms to continue to use migrant labor. Chris.
Ryan Nobles, thank you for that. So, Nick, the president has publicly praised ICE, but NBC News has new reporting that Stephen Miller, who we know has his ear, is upset that immigration arrests have fallen from a recent high of 2,300 a day to under 2,000. What can you tell us about the pressure agents are feeling right now?
Sure. Well, there is a relentless pressure coming down from the White House on ICE, on rank and file officers and agents who are feel like they have to meet these numbers that they're they told me were like a mission impossible. We're talking about levels of arrests that are 5 and 6 times what they were doing before, and they simply don't have the resources, the personnel, to meet what Miller and others at the White House are demanding of them. And that's, one of the big factors that has led to low morale at the agency, and many agents and officers saying they're, more miserable in their jobs right now than they've ever been.
The Seattle Times, Nick, describes another scene beyond the ones we just showed, where with tires screeching, some SUVs pulled up along a main drag. People came out masked, some of them with protective vests, and agents, quote, grabbed a woman known as the food lady because she sells food in the community along with other street vendors. As they were walking off, a bystander shouted out to the ICE agents, "What kind of people are you?" Some agents I know you talk to are acutely aware of the fact that they've become a kind of persona non grata in some places. Tell us more about how they're feeling about how.
Just so you know, it's totally not illegal to find out if ICE is staying at a hotel or a motel and then standing outside of that hotel or motel and making as much commotion as you can till other guests complain and then ICE has to leave. That's not illegal yet, just so everybody knows.
How they're perceived.
I mean, certainly there are agents out there that are all in on the president's orders and are thrilled to be doing this kind of work. But I think that glosses over the many others who feel conflicted about what they're doing. They signed up to be federal law enforcement agents. They thought, they want to be out there catching criminals and, protecting the country from national security threats. And instead, they're under this incredible pressure to meet their quotas. And so they're being sent out to go for the lowest hanging fruit, so to speak, of, the easiest people to arrest. And a lot of times those are, poor people who are out on the street who they could be profiling. They think that they may be arrestable. And so they're grabbing them. And it's sort of the lowest quality type of immigration enforcement work. And it shouldn't be a surprise that a lot of these agents feel really conflicted about that. And at the same time, they know that the public is furious. When they go out in public, they're getting, screamed at. They're being confronted by activists. And so they're masking up and sort of retreating behind all this tactical gear. And they know that in the long term, it really undermines the agency and the perception of ICE in the public.
Even if they're not rounding up the number of people that say Stephen Miller would like them to, obviously they are continuing to round people up. We know, for example, that they opened Alligator Alcatraz down in Florida. Do they have even the infrastructure to keep up?
Well, they haven't had the infrastructure to keep up. They've only been funded for about 40,000, detainees in their detention centers per day. Right now, they're close to 60,000. So their detention centers are massively overcrowded and conditions continue to deteriorate. But let's remember that Congress just gave DHS and ICE tens of billions of dollars and, almost unimaginable amount of funding, including about $45 billion to expand detention facilities across the United States. So they now have the money to try to carry out the kind of mass deportation campaign that Trump has demanded of them. And the next phase, I think we can expect that all of these tensions, all of the scenes that you're seeing are going to really intensify. And they are capable of arresting and deporting a lot more people than they have been doing so far.
People who want to read more of your reporting can find it in The Atlantic. Nick Miroff, thanks for coming on the show.
I wanted to move on to that news article. There's still the State Department. I want to talk about Epstein again. I want to keep the Epstein train going. Why do I want to keep the Epstein train going? Well, because some more information has come out. We'll start with the article that Tim sent me. So, FBI Director Dan Bongino, future uncertain amid fallout over Epstein file decision. Deputy FBI Director Dan, I'm just gonna call him Dan, guys. Future is uncertain amid the growing fallout over the Justice Department's decision to not disclose any more records of its investigation into deceased sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Multiple sources familiar with the matter confirmed to ABC News. The sources said Dan has recently suggested to allies he may resign following days of growing outrage publicly voiced by President Donald Trump's most vocal supporters over a memo issued earlier in the week that stated the FBI and DOJ plan to make no future public disclosures related to the release of the Epstein case. The review further confirmed Epstein died by suicide in his jail cell in Manhattan in 2019. Dan did not respond to repeated requests for comments from ABC News. The FBI declined to comment. Much of the criticism has focused on the statements made by both Dan and the FBI Director Kash Patel over the past several years, where they have stoked conspiracy theories around the Epstein's death. In an episode of his podcast in 2023, Dan told listeners that Jeffrey Epstein's story is a big deal. Please do not let this story go, blaming people in Washington swamp who are not telling you the truth. In the DOJ and FBI's memo released Monday, however, both agencies said their review determined there was no incriminating client list and no credible evidence found that Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals as part of his action. One of our highest priorities is combating child exploitation and bringing justice to victims, the memo said. Perpetuating unfounded theories about Epstein serves neither of those ends. According to a source in recent days, Dan has expressed growing disagreement with the Attorney General Pam Bondi over how the announcement was handled. Earlier this week, Dan had a fiery confrontation with Bondi over how she has handled the review of Epstein's files and the Monday memo, the source says. However, in a post on X Friday afternoon, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche said he personally worked with Dan and Patel to craft this memo. All of us signed onto the contents of this memo, and the conclusion stated that in the memo, Blanche said, suggestion by anyone that there is any daylight between the FBI and the DOJ leadership on this memo composition and its release is patently false. Sources told ABC News that Dan took the day off work Friday and that has fueled further speculation about his future. Ooh. Now, why would Dan be upset? What could have Dan so upset right now, right? Could it be?
This is the worst cover-up of my lifetime, the Epstein case. The reason I'm talking about it...
This is Voidzilla, aka CoffeeZilla's most recent video. I know we've been following him this entire saga. It's from 16 hours ago. Please go check it out. Link in the chat, into the top. Anyway, this is why people are upset, is because it's also a terrible cover-up. We went through the video that CoffeeZilla also talked about. Blue, remember yesterday we went through that, the whole building, and I'm telling you, I think the camera angles that they're giving us, or what they're telling us the camera angles are, is a lie. I think their blueprints are a lie.
So much is because if you can get away with this, you really can get away with anything. If the government can tell people to not believe what they just said a few months ago and have everyone be fine with that, that's just a level of gaslighting that I refuse to be a part of. Never forget, they just promised us names in the release of the Epstein files.
Breaking news right now, you're going to see some Epstein information being released.
What kind?
A lot of flight logs, a lot of names, a lot of information.
But in this case, in Epstein's case, it is incredibly disturbing. We have flight logs, we have information, names that will come out.
Is it going to be shocking?
I don't see how it's not shocking that there were so many individuals that were hidden and kept secret and not been held accountable.
Yeah, well, apparently there are no names to be given, no list, no blackmail. Epstein has now been pushed as a lone trafficker. It's the lone trafficker theory, guys. Essentially, the government's memo that they just released contradicts everything we've seen before, and now basically implies that Epstein was trafficking to himself and Ghislaine Maxwell was trafficking to Epstein, and there was no other blackmail or trafficking going on. That's what this memo essentially implies. His wealth and his power then would be just from his skill as a New York financier.
I'm talking about Jeff Epstein, the New York financier.
Basically, he was the world's greatest tax advisor by day and the world's greatest trafficker at night to himself. And the rich and powerful people who all flocked to him and to his island had no idea of this double life. That really is kind of the heart of the modern theory, is that just all Epstein by himself, and then his friends just were there for his tax advice, despite not being a tax professional or a lawyer. Not only that, another huge revelation is the fact that really the government has increased the number of victims and decreased the number of perpetrators, right? We had the idea that there were these other perpetrators for a while, that they were just redacted because the government was building cases. Now we got pretty clear statements that there isn't evidence to bring future cases on third parties. But if you look at the original 2019 indictment, it says dozens of victims. This is from Ken Klippenstein. But the Epstein review says over 1,000 victims. So what happened, guys? And by the way, in the interim, they also increased the number to 200 to 250.
200 victims, 200. So we have well over 250 actually.
So we went from dozens to 200 to over 1,000 in the span of basically a year in terms of victims. We like 10x the number of victims, but now there's no perpetrators. Like the perpetrators have been reduced. That is the crazy thing about what they're implying here, what this lone trafficker theory is pushing forward. It's also strange because previously Epstein, in a court filing, is said to have provided information to the FBI as agreed upon. Case agent advised that no federal prosecution will occur in this matter as long as Epstein continues to uphold his agreement with the state of Florida. So apparently there was some deal where Epstein was providing information to the FBI. What information? We don't know because no one else was involved. There's also the simple fact that if you go to the FBI records, what they call the vault, most of the files are just heavily redacted. So the idea that we got some transparency wave is literally a joke. Yes, it is true. There's no Epstein list where there's like names written down, but names exist in documents, on videos, in images, and they're all redacted. What's going on here? They're going to say, oh, it's all for the victims, right? But it's not all victim names. In addition to that, this lone trafficker theory is already...
Yeah, when you read like court reports and court filings, you can actually see like, okay, this person isn't named, but it gives their pronouns and descriptors for multiple sections. Therefore, we know this is the same person. And usually like people who are named that are victims will be like victim 1, victim 2, victim 3, and things like that. So like that's how you can tell there's other people in the file other than just Epstein and the victims.
On shaky grounds when you think about Prince Andrew's settlement with Virginia Giuffre.
Jane Doe and Bob. I thought it was John Doe.
Where he paid $16 million to make civil sexual assault allegations go away. Now, of course, it's worth saying that he
just learned about that last night. We watched Jawbree's thing, but this is like, it is, but like Bob better. But I like Bob better. That's fair. That's just not legal standard.
did not admit to guilt. This was a settlement, but that is what you're always going to have with these rich and powerful people. In the same way, you also have Leon Black, who reportedly paid $158 million over 5 years to Jeffrey Epstein for tax advice. And guess what? Leon Black, billionaire, also paid the U.S. Virgin Islands $62 million in cash as part of a settlement, a non-prosecution, where they wouldn't go after him for anything from, quote, any and all claims of any nature whatsoever, specifically related to Jeffrey Epstein. It's worth noting that $15 million of this cash payment will be going to counseling programs and activities or mental health services. You also have Jess Staley, the former boss of Barclays. He directly admitted to having sex with a member of Epstein's staff, which you would expect if someone was.
I wonder if that's going to be in the half of the Epstein video that we haven't watched yet.
Running a trafficking operation, although I just have to say that there was a statement that this was entirely consensual, and I'm not saying anything about that. I'm simply saying the idea that Epstein was just trafficking for himself is unlikely to be true, in my opinion. Later, Staley wrote to Epstein, "Say hi to Snow White." Epstein replied, "What character would you like next?" Staley responded, "Beauty and the Beast." And then Jeffrey Epstein said, "Well, one side is available." Obviously, some type of coded message. You can read into that for yourself, but all of this is public. That's what I'm trying to say. That's what makes the government's memo so infuriating, is so much reporting has already been done. These settlements with powerful figures under denials, yes, but also under very questionable circumstances, make just a complete denial and statement that all of this was just Epstein impossible to believe. In September 2009, Epstein also emailed a woman named Irina to tell her that Jess Staley is staying in the Berkeley Hotel in London tonight. Staley emailed Epstein the next day to say, "I should have taken your offer," according to the Times. There's also this book by one of the 60 Minutes correspondents called A Ticking Clock, where he says that he met with Ghislaine Maxwell, and he said, "I want the tapes," I said to Maxwell at a table at Regency Bar. "I know he was videotaping everyone. I want the tape of Trump with the girls." She didn't deny the existence of the tapes, but said, "I don't know where they are." He apparently replied, "Ask Epstein," and she gave him a stern look and pointed a finger at my face. "I'm the daughter of a press baron. I know the way you people think. If you do one side, you must do the other. If you get tapes on Trump, you have to do Clinton." Now, again, what you make of a third-hand source like this talking to Ghislaine Maxwell, who apparently doesn't deny that some of these tapes exist, was she even telling the truth or just playing some game? Either way, this was all known about, not just by people after the fact, but allegedly by people during the fact. This is from Mark Epstein. It's sourced from Jeffrey Epstein. Quote, "If I said what I know about both candidates, they'd have to..."
Yeah, Jawbree covered that.
"Cancel the election." That's what Jeffrey told me in 2016. So not even Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell allegedly were claiming this was all just between them. They were constantly insinuating that there were compromising things on various powerful people. What's funny is that Trump himself, even before he was in a position to declassify this stuff, had accused other powerful people of doing these things.
Bill Clinton.
Nice guy. Got a lot of problems coming up, in my opinion, with the famous island with Jeffrey Epstein. That island was really a cesspool. There's no question about it. Just ask Prince Andrew.
You also have the fact that Jeffrey Epstein was in touch with other convicted pedophiles. Larry Nassar, he was writing letters. So the idea, once again, that he was just by himself, off by himself, doing things on his island by himself, and then taking calls with people like Bill Gates.
Who's Larry Nassar again? I forget. I feel like I have like a visual, but I'm not grabbing it.
simply for philanthropic advice really pushes the bounds of belief. Don't forget, a close associate of Bill Gates was named a fallback executor on the will of Jeffrey Epstein, which he, by the way, said he was shocked by and he deeply regrets meeting Epstein. Bill Gates has said similar things to that effect. Of course, Bill Gates fraternized with Epstein after he was convicted of crimes. Previously, he told the Wall Street Journal, "I didn't have any business relationship or friendship with him," but in fact, he met multiple times with him at his Manhattan townhouse. Now, once again, I have to say real quick, all of these people are innocent until proven guilty. All of them deny doing anything.
Larry Nassar was the gymnastics coach charged with essaying multiple female athletes. Oh my God. Thank you for reminding me.
Untoward. But my point is, there are already too many associations to make the lone trafficker theory make any sense. For example, Jean-Luc Brunel was
part of the Jay Aubrey video we watched last night, covered this part.
somebody who apparently trafficked a
Guys, look, we're learning in real time. I love it.
bunch of people to Epstein, who himself abused a bunch of women and even was charged for it. He was charged for some really awful things and then later found dead in his cell. Interestingly, Epstein was actually a financier of Brunel's modeling agency where a lot of this alleged abuse happened. So once again, the idea of the lone trafficker just doesn't make sense because Epstein's directly linked to another guy who was also abusing women. So after all of this, they're really asking you to believe the unbelievable. They're asking you to not believe what...
He just looks like he's holding his breath. I'm sorry. It just looks funny. Like Scouts of Honor. That kind of thing.
they've said about this case, both out of office and now in power. They're asking you to not believe public reporting linking Epstein to other known files. They're asking you not to believe suspicious circumstances regarding settlements of powerful people. They're asking you to believe that Epstein was just the greatest tax advisor and financial advisor on the planet that all of these billionaires needed to consult, despite the fact that there are entire organizations built around providing the same services as this without the, links to crimes. They're asking you to believe that when people are talking about Snow White and Beauty and the Beast, they're referencing Disneyland. And they're especially asking you to believe that they have found 900 new victims since reviewing these files and exactly 0 new perpetrators. So I'm just not buying it personally. I find it insulting to the intelligence of every single person who's ever looked at this story. And yeah, it really makes me feel like this was a appropriate time to launch a Crime is Legal merch collection, to be honest. So yeah, this is probably my last video.
Go get CoffeeZilla's merch. All right, we got a little bit of time. We'll do part 2 of the Jeffrey Epstein video. Relearn some of this information and see exactly why Dan Bongino is upset. Aubrey. Part 2. All right, so last we left off, it went over like the very early life of Epstein and covered up until about the 90s. He also talks about like Miss Maxwell and Prince Andrew and potentially Trump and Clinton and Alan Dershowitz and all the other people like allegedly who may or may not have been clients.
About 2 decades ago, authorities in Palm Beach, Florida began receiving tips of a middle-aged, enigmatic billionaire abusing underage girls in the community. At that time, Jeffrey Epstein already carried an unusual reputation. People knew he was someone with deep ties to the upper echelon of society, though not much was known about the exact nature of those connections, where he acquired all his wealth, and what was happening inside the walls of his 14,000 square foot palace. That is until a concerned parent dialed 911 on March 14th, 2005, and expressed concern that her 14-year-old stepdaughter had received $300 in cash after a visit to a certain gentleman's house, as stated in the call that was later publicized in the Netflix documentary Filthy Rich. The girl, known only as Jane Doe 1 to police, had been bullied and was labeled a prostitute by other kids at Palm Beach Royal High after rumors of her and her friend giving Epstein a quote-unquote massage began circulating around the school, according to the Miami Herald journalist Julie K. Brown. As she wrote in her book, Perversion of Justice, an investigation would soon identify the cousin of Jane Doe's boyfriend, Haley Robson, as the 16-year-old who introduced her to the financier. Being one of his many teenage recruiters, Haley's job was to bring Epstein as many young victims as possible, telling People magazine that at 16, she had no idea what she was getting herself into, stating that she wasn't mature enough to understand the repercussions. Thinking to herself at the time, what am I gonna do next? Am I going to college? Am I gonna move? Am I gonna stay here? Etc. As she went on to testify that if a victim refused his sexual advances, they were sometimes made to bring him other girls. The younger, the better, as Haley recalled him saying. This created a years-long pyramid scheme of abuse, as some have called it, and finally prompted the Palm Beach PD to begin an investigation. Spying on Epstein's house and taking note of the young girls who would visit the man at all hours of the day, after digging through his trash and finding concerning receipts for sex books, police obtained a warrant and discovered a high school transcript belonging to one of his accusers, along with a receipt for a dozen roses that he sent the same girl. As Detective Joseph Ricari told Brown, the house was exactly how the girls had described it, right down to the bizarre color of the furniture. Although police identified over 24 victims during this time, we know for a fact there were still many, many more out there. In fact, one of the reasons we still don't know the precise number of girls Epstein abused is because of an infamous plea deal that would come later. A deal that essentially quashed an ongoing FBI investigation that could have exposed the scope of Epstein's operation right then and there, which is enough to leave any victim feeling despondent and disrespected. They could have seen justice if it weren't in part for Epstein's team of seasoned lawyers working with the government to hammer out a highly controversial agreement.
Christ, there's a boomer around here.
Wow, thanks for making me old.
The files terms.
One of the disappointed lawyers who pressed for release of the FBI Epstein dealings said the treatment went way beyond preferential.
Because they don't have to. There's no law or statute that says that the justification for a plea negotiation has to be actually written in there. It doesn't have to be written in there, and it really is something that we may never know because it really is what came out of all of their negotiations.
What was so important to the government that sex crimes described in this agreement were treated so lightly?
Now, I would suggest you go ahead and watch part 1 of this series if you haven't already, as it sort of sets the groundwork for who Epstein was by
Yes, we finished that last night.
2005, the connections he had already made, and what victims had been saying about him from as early as 2002. This video will consist
But if you haven't seen it, link in the top of the chat.
of everything that came after, as I'll try to explain to the best of my abilities how and why Epstein was allowed to continue abusing girls for nearly a decade after his short stint in prison.
The court docket with his name on it lists a string of delays and continuances, and that speaks to a deal in the works.
Now, if they can't make this go away, then they're going to minimize the damage. And that's what happened here. It's probably going to be damage control to have the shortest amount of prison time, the least amount of harm to him.
But before we go any further here, I do want to go ahead and thank today's sponsor, Aura. If you've ever Googled yourself, you may be alarmed to see a shocking amount of your own personal information, like your name or email address, exposed online for the entire world to see. Shady data brokers are known to sell your information to scammers, spammers, or to anyone else who may want to target you. Thankfully, though, Aura shows you exactly which brokers are selling your information.
Googling myself sounds so dirty. It kind of does. Almost sounds like oogling. Ogling. Oh my god, that meme about how I say arugula. Get every time.
Information and can submit opt-out requests on your behalf. It helps reduce the amount of spam you get and protects you from hackers who may be trying to use that information to access your personal accounts. And it's all super easy to set up, which means you don't have to download several different apps to get features like antivirus, VPN, password management, parental controls, identity theft insurance, and more. Instead, you get it all at one convenient place at one affordable price. Just click the link in the description below or head to aura.com/jobry for a 14-day free trial and see how much of your information is already being sold right now. Huge thanks again to the amazing people over at Aura for sponsoring this one and keeping all of our data safe and secure.
Edward says he's fighting to have the federal plea deal for Epstein tossed out and a new prosecution launched. West Palm Beach Congresswoman Lois Frankel is calling for a congressional investigation.
When it comes to the Epstein plea deal, there's a small cast of characters we'll need to introduce. You had the Dersh, of course, but Epstein also brought on legal powerhouse Kenneth Starr to his all-star defense team. No pun intended there, I just realized how that sounds though. Starr, who rose to prominence when he uncovered the Clinton-Lewinsky scandal that led to the former president's impeachment, was also a member of the Federalist Society along with fellow Epstein attorney Jay Lefkowitz. The Federalist Society, as Brown points out in her book, is accredited with producing 6 Supreme Court justices, most notably Samuel Alito, who also just so happens to be Alexander Acosta's old mentor, a guy who, most famously, became known for personally approving the abhorrent plea deal, which adds to the idea that, as lead detective on the Epstein case, Joseph Recarey told Brown, a lot of the prosecutors who should have been on the side of the victims found themselves weirdly enamored by those who made up Epstein's impressive defense team, adding the amount of evidence that disappeared or was covered up in this case was mind-boggling, referring to a horde of Epstein's computers and hard drives that mysteriously went missing upon a raid of his home. Not the last time this would happen, by the way. In fact, he and Michael Ryder, at the time the police chief who launched the original investigation into Epstein in Palm Beach, both maintained that for whatever reason, prosecutors would rather throw the case instead of go after someone so well connected in the political world. I mean, after all, maybe some of these guys wanted jobs in higher places. They weren't exactly gonna make any friends by throwing a prolific campaign donor behind bars for life. And one way of assuring Epstein would get a lighter sentence was by putting the case in front of a grand jury. A grand jury who, according to Recarey, was only given part of the Epstein story by state prosecutor Lana Belalovic. Belalovic, it should be mentioned, had her own doubts regarding the victims' testimonies, and basically fed right into the narrative Epstein's defense had tried cooking up, that these victims were actually not victims at all. They were drunks, delinquents, and drug users hell-bent on attacking an innocent old man for his money. They were nothing more than greedy prostitutes, according to both Epstein's defense and seemingly Belalovic herself. In her book, Brown recounts an alleged conversation between Recarey and Belalovic. Recarey asking the prosecutor, "How can you not believe these girls when you haven't even interviewed them?" Recarey himself had already interviewed at least 30 victims, by the way. Belalovic responded, "Look, we have pictures of a girl holding a beer in her hand. She's underage and she's drinking. They're talking about smoking pot and drinking and sex on MySpace. This is problematic." To which Recarey rightfully argued, "Tell me which teenager doesn't drink. Based on this criteria, you're telling me the only victim of sexual battery could be a nun." Recarey insisted the evidence they mounted against Epstein during this time, which included flight logs, phone records, phone numbers belonging to girls, copies of written phone messages found in Epstein's trash, and even a high school transcript belonging to one of the victims, was more than enough for a conviction. Not to mention at least 24 victims had been identified and interviewed by authorities at this point. For all intents and purposes, there was no valid reason for this not to be a slam dunk case, which makes what happened an even bigger travesty for all the girls traumatized at the hands of Epstein and his high-profile buddies. Once Dershowitz had officially taken the reins, Ryder described state attorney Barry Krischer's apparent heel turn to the New Yorker, noting also in a deposition that at first Krischer said, "Let's go for it. This is an adult male in his 50s who had sexual contact with children." But once Dershowitz got involved, the tone and tenor of the discussions of this case with Mr. Krischer changed completely. After meeting with Dershowitz a few times, who went to nasty lengths to destroy these girls' reputations, as he once supposedly told the attorney in private, Krischer made a controversial move to pull together a grand jury who did successfully charge Epstein in 2006 with only solicitation of a prostitute. Only that wasn't even really scratching the surface of what Epstein was being accused of. Not only had Epstein solicited from way more girls than just one, like the charge asserted. Reccari later told Brown he felt the grand jury hadn't been given the full picture of the situation at all, and that Belilovic and Krischer were essentially resting the entire case on one victim's testimony, not even alluding to the almost 30 other girls that had accused Epstein in total. These were also children, mind you. The fact that this child victim was reduced to just a prostitute in this ruling should be criminal in itself. It goes without saying that Michael Ryder was furious, as anyone with a conscience would be. I mean, Epstein was released on just a $3,000 bond hours after the charge. Those at the Palm Beach PD who knew the extent of Epstein's crimes immediately slammed Krischer for giving Epstein special treatment. Ryder then called upon the FBI to open their own investigation. During what was called Operation Leap Year, the FBI began to compile even more mountains of evidence against the financier. For a while, it looked like Epstein might finally be sent away for good, until Alan Dershowitz reached a shocking non-prosecution agreement with U.S. Attorney for Miami, Alexander Acosta. This secret deal that took over a year to negotiate has been rightfully and viciously criticized for giving Epstein basically all the leeway he could have asked for. Even Epstein's own attorneys called it unprecedented and highly unusual, just to give you a sense of how generous it was. Yes, it required him to plead guilty, but only to 2 state charges of procuring a minor for prostitution, which barely accounted for all the years worth of evidence and testimony Palm Beach authorities and now the FBI had collected. He was required to register as a sex offender, but that was a small fee for avoiding what could have been a lifetime in federal prison. Instead, Epstein was only required to spend 13 months in what was essentially just a summer camp for rich people at the end of the day. I mean, he was still allowed to go into his office during the day to complete work as long as he returned to his facility at night. Jail records show he would buy things like women's panties during this time and was seemingly allowed to go in and out of an unlocked cell at will thanks to his work release, reportedly spending 12 hours a day, 6 days a week at his private office. He was also apparently allowed to visit a chiropractor sometimes 3 days a week. Records even stopped referring to Epstein as an
Better healthcare than any of us in jail.
Inmate eventually, just in case you were wondering how comfortable he was here. It got to a point where one U.S. attorney wrote to a deputy police chief that Epstein making telephone calls, web surfing, and having food delivered to him is probably not in accordance with the objectives of imprisonment. You think? And while we don't know everyone who visited Epstein behind bars, since most visitor logs were conveniently destroyed by authorities, he was visited by Jean-Luc Brunel upwards of 70 times in prison. I'm sure nothing shady was going on there. Attorneys representing Jane Doe 1 and Jane Doe 2 called it one of the most extraordinarily lenient plea deals in modern history. To make it even more of a slap in the face, the only victim called to testify during this whole thing wasn't even told the deal had been struck, and neither had her lawyer, though that didn't stop Belilovic from telling the judge that the victim had in fact agreed to the deal as stated by Brown. And if you were wondering what happened to Alexander Acosta, well, let's just say he saw a little bit of a bump in status when he was appointed U.S. Secretary of Labor in 2017, handpicked by the 45th President, Donald J. Trump.
The nominee for Secretary of the Department of Labor will be Mr. Alex Acosta.
Brown acknowledges that as labor secretary, Acosta would have had direct oversight of America's labor laws, which quite literally includes human trafficking. In fact, if it weren't for her bombshell article published in 2018, it's likely Acosta would have kept that position longer, and it may have kept Epstein further away from public consciousness too. It was really the work of Julie K. Brown and others at the Miami Herald that demanded attention be brought to this dark stain on Acosta's resume and called for a re-examination of Epstein himself, which ultimately culminated with his second arrest the following year. Not even Congress seemed to give a second thought toward Acosta's sweetheart deal, as they confirmed him to the president.
Trump enunciates all the weirdest syllables. Yeah, oh, Acosta. Yeah. Yeah, I don't like the way he talks.
cabinet with ease. So if you needed to have any less faith in our government, then there you go. Acosta, however, facing public pressure, chose to resign from the Trump administration in shame, about 2 years after he got the job. Then, after an extensive investigation into the Epstein deal in 2020, the Department of Justice ruled that while Alexander Acosta acted in, quote, poor judgment, his decision did not translate to professional misconduct, despite leaving the victims completely in the dark while plea negotiations were underway. And although Acosta may have personally maintained that he did nothing wrong, standing by his decision and offering no apologies to the victims, the scandal had already cost him his career, so not sure what he's up to now, but I'm just glad we don't have to see his face on TV anymore. By 2009, Epstein was a free man, even though he resented Dershowitz for getting him what he believed to be too harsh of a sentence. After all, Epstein never believed his crimes amounted to anything more than stealing a bagel, in his own words. To give you an idea of the ego we're dealing with here, once Epstein got out, he commissioned an entire mural of himself in prison as a reminder of where he had once been and where he could very well end up again. Not like this would stop him from abusing more women over the next decade, though. In December 2023, the Wall Street Journal published an extensive piece documenting in great detail all of the women who have since come forward about the experience they've had with Jeffrey Epstein after he got out of prison in 2009. And it should be emphasized, every single instance of abuse outlined in this article after 2009 would not have happened had Epstein been rightfully sent to jail for life when authorities had him. He was instead able to throw $100,000 at a well-known PR firm to rehabilitate his image in 2011, according to court documents. The same firm previously used by Michael Vick and Rush Limbaugh to varying degrees of success, I suppose. Either way, Epstein didn't seem to have much of a problem getting on the good side of scientists who gladly accepted hefty donations to their Ivy League schools and laboratories. One particular beneficiary who was actually cool with Epstein on a personal level before and after his sentencing was theoretical physicist at Arizona State and Yale, Lawrence Krauss. Krauss, who I mentioned at the beginning of this video, actually gave that Daily Beast article some more quotables, which are very rough. They're rough, okay? If anything, the unfortunate period he suffered has caused him to really think about what he wants to do with his money and his time, and support knowledge, which, by the way, again, is just such a laughable sentiment. What
Did yoga tonight. I did cards for seconds. I hurt.
knowledge Jeffrey Epstein had to offer the scientific community beyond a blank check and occasional visit?
Eat a hot tub. Subscribe to the channel so I can feed my family whatever extra money over time to eventually a hot tub.
To Pedophile Island is truly beyond my speculation. He believed in cryogenics, for God's sake. He wanted his penis frozen so that he could keep having sex after he died. He wanted to ingratiate his DNA into the human collective at his baby-making farm in New Mexico. To think that this guy was some scientific expert? That's insane. That's just not true. That's insane. I'm sorry.
Gross.
That's insane. But Krauss doesn't stop there, only continuing to blow smoke up his ass by telling Alexandra Wolf Jeffrey has surrounded himself with beautiful women and young women, but they're not as young as the ones that were claimed. So obviously that means the claims couldn't be true, right? Come on, Krause. Use your purported scientific reasoning here to deduce that Epstein, a guy that now, by her own admission, hangs out with girls significantly younger than him, might just possibly go a tad lower than that too while he's at it. I mean, then again, I'm not the one with a PhD. So he continues. As a scientist, I always judge things on empirical evidence, and he always has women ages 19 to 23 around him, but I've never seen anything else. So as a scientist,
Channel goal. Maybe I'll bookmark it. Yeah, maybe.
My presumption is that whatever the problem,
Let's get an SD card reader first. Let's start small. Okay, one new sub a day.
problems were, I would believe him over other people. Capping it off with that amazing quote I referenced at the beginning. Just disturbing doesn't even begin to describe it. Though Krause's closeness with Epstein maybe isn't as much.
I will do hot tub stream. I will sit in a hot tub and watch the news. I am not above that. I will spend hours in a hot tub. I love hot tub. I love anything that I can submerge up to my shoulders in, whether it's vertical or horizontal or vertical. And I love like anything I could potentially, like, if I could just go under the water, even better. I love hot tubs.
much of a shock in hindsight, now that there have been a slew of other allegations against Krause in the years following his proud endorsement of Epstein here. But he has been pretty much excluded from all professional circles he used to occupy. Years too late, in my opinion. A 2019 BuzzFeed investigation discovered IRS forms proving that Epstein was also not just a regular contributor, but apparently the most generous contributor to the EDGE Foundation, a group of scientific intellectuals that included not just Krause, but also Steven Pinker, a cognitive psychologist and linguist who claims to not really know Epstein, but still found himself in some hot water when it was revealed Dershowitz tapped him for help on interpreting a law in Epstein's Palm Beach case. One of the most notable intellectuals introduced to Epstein through the EDGE Foundation was none other than Stephen Hawking, a name whose appearance in the latest batch of unsealed court documents shocked the world. As you probably know at this point, Hawking had a pretty ominous connection to the pedophile. If you didn't see it in the news, you probably saw it on TikTok or South Park pretty soon probably. But I will go ahead and let you know that right off the bat, this screenshot is not real. I know it may have looked real at first, considering the Photoshop or Inspect Element job someone did on it, but I gotta tell you, the actual mention of Hawking's name is somehow even more concerning. According to the recent drop, Epstein named the physicist in an extremely poorly worded email he typed to Ghislaine Maxwell, instructing her on how to reward any of Virginia's friends and family willing to disprove allegations that Hawking, quote, participated in an underage orgy on Little St. James. Now, we know that Hawking did in fact visit the island the same year this email was sent out, as evident by these photos taken in 2006, where Hawking can be seen attending a conference on gravity. Here he is trying out a submarine that Ghislaine specifically tailored for his wheelchair. I mean, what else are friends for, right? A newspaper article from that time even features a quote from Epstein where he seems to describe the purpose of that dinner. There is no agenda except fun and physics, and that's fun with a capital F. I mean, that's just such a weird statement when you consider who it's coming from. Wait, what do you mean by fun? The New York Times also provided a bit more context in 2019, noting that it took place over the course of 5 days and included this email from physicist Alan Guth, who told the Times that Epstein was always followed by a group of something like 3 or 4 young women, which lines up with what we've heard from Miles and Kathy Alexander, the couple who ran the island from 1999 to 2007. Kathy telling the Daily Mail in 2011 that she became concerned about the ages of the young girls he was bringing to the island. A few of them looked very young, and I couldn't help but wonder if their mothers knew where they were, with Miles stating he sometimes had to push back against Epstein's attempts to, quote, smuggle in female guests by boat without logging their names. One former air traffic controller even telling Vanity Fair on multiple occasions, I saw Epstein exit his helicopter, stand on the tarmac in full view of my tower, and board his private jet with children, female children. They were always wearing college sweatshirts. It seemed like camouflage. That's the best way to put it. Recently described as, quote, the perfect hideaway and haven for trafficking young women and underage girls for sexual servitude in a lawsuit filed by the U.S. Virgin Islands, Epstein initially bought Little St. James from venture capitalist Arch Cummins for $7 million in 1998, though he was reportedly known to spend time at the island even in the years predating the official purchase. In addition to ripping up all the native vegetation in exchange for 40-foot palm trees, Epstein decorated his 75-acre personal kingdom with a massive sundial, outdoor massage rooms, incredibly weird statues, swimming pools, a helipad, a tennis court, and a number of small villas, with the most infamous, of course, being this blue and white temple, with huge painted doors capped off with a golden dome that apparently blew off during Hurricane Maria. It also used to have statues around and on top of it, depicting what looks to be bird-like creatures on the roof, with what some have suggested are Greek gods out in front. But to this day, it still has not been confirmed what this temple was officially used for, with some of the wilder conspiracy theories being it was anything from a place for Epstein to carry out sacrifices to a burial ground for his late parents. However, Business Insider's J.K. Trotter was able to track down a piano tutor by the name of Patrick Barron, who visited the temple twice in 2012 to tune a Wurlitzer grand piano belonging to Epstein. While he never met the man himself, Barron described Epstein's lair as one large room with bookshelves that stretched all the way up to the ceiling. According to Barron, above the black piano he was there to tune up hung a large portrait depicting Jeffrey Epstein next to Pope John Paul II, which, yes, was confirmed to actually exist during Ghislaine's 2021 trial. Footage taken by urban explorers over the last couple of years also seemed to back up Barron's claim, since there really doesn't seem to be much of anything inside this one room, which fuels another conspiracy that Epstein installed an intricate tunnel system that sprawled beneath the island, with some wondering if these bunkers were there for anything more than just maintenance. But what we know about the island already is weird and grotesque enough on its own, as it was primarily a way for Epstein to abuse girls while distancing himself further from the feds. Or in Epstein's own words, this island was a place for him to truly do anything he wanted.
I realize what I am. I'm very comfortable in my own skin, on my own island, or on my own ranch. I can think the thoughts I want to think. I can do the work I want to do, and I'm free to explore as I see fit.
But he sure didn't do it alone, as one recent lawsuit alleged. See, in 2022, the Virgin Islands filed a massive lawsuit against America's largest bank, JP Morgan, for knowingly, negligently, and unlawfully providing and pulling the levers through which recruiters and victims were paid and was indispensable to the operation and concealment of the Epstein trafficking enterprise. The suit also added that human trafficking was the principal business of the accounts Epstein maintained at JP Morgan. It alleged that the bank continued providing services for Epstein even after he was raising red flags for his conviction as a child sex offender in 2008, as he was one of their most valuable clients. Though a spokesperson for the bank has tried to say they would not have done business with Epstein if we believed he was using our bank in any way to help commit heinous crimes, a lawyer representing Epstein's victims argued in a June 2023 court filing that the bank had no reason not to know the extent of Epstein's profound relationship with the former head of JP Morgan's wealth management department, Jes Staley.
Alright, so many...
Jes Staley's argument that he had no relationship with Jeffrey Epstein pretty much completely fell apart after a series of emails came out, depicting an extremely embarrassing bromance that included Jes writing to Epstein things like, "I miss you, the world is a tough place, hang in there," while he was jailed in Palm Beach for, again, being a pedophile. Epstein was assuring the executive he was free to use the island as much as he wanted while he was away. All the while, other JP Morgan executives were debating amongst themselves whether or not they should drop Epstein as a client. One 2008 email obtained by Bloomberg alluded to the bank being uncomfortable with Epstein, yet that didn't stop them from continuing to provide service to him until 2013, notably thanks to intervention from Staley himself. One 2010 email from JP Morgan's risk management literally asked the question, "See below, new allegations of an investigation related to child trafficking. Are you still comfortable with this client who is now a registered sex offender?" Rest assured, though, that as the Financial Times reported, the bank later confirmed that, quote, Jes Staley discussed the topic with Jeffrey Epstein, who replied there was no truth to the allegations, no evidence, and was not expecting any problems. Now is also a good time to mention that while the current JP Morgan CEO, Jamie Dimon, denies having ever heard of Epstein remarkably, further emails seem to show Leslie Groff, Epstein's personal assistant, setting up an in-person meeting between Epstein, Staley, and Dimon, reading it, "Shall I have Lynn provide heavy snacks for your evening appointments with Jes Staley and Jamie Dimon, or is this to be a nice sit-down dinner at 9 p.m? To which Epstein responded, "Snacks." The Financial Times also notes that Staley continued exchanging emails with Epstein reading, "So when all hell breaks loose and the world is crumbling, I will come here to Little St. James and be at peace. Presently, I'm in the hot tub with a glass of white wine. This is an amazing place, truly amazing. Next time, we're here together. I owe you much, and I deeply appreciate our friendship. I have few so profound." When Epstein sent a photo of a young woman, Staley then replied, "Don't tell me a French wine," to which Epstein remarked, "Always thoughts of alcohol." Whether that's code for something else is up to you to determine, of course. But separate emails also depict Staley referring to Disney princesses, writing, "That was fun. Say hi to Snow White for me." Epstein then...
Oh my god, this is We just saw them on CopyZilla. They're intertwining again.
Asked, what character would you like next? When Staley answered Beauty and the Beast, Epstein stated, well, one side is available. And in 2008, while the two were making plans for Staley to visit Epstein's Palm Beach home, court filings allege Epstein wired a girl with an Eastern European surname $2,000, sending her another $3,000 in 2009 at the same time Staley told Epstein that he was going to London.
News was breaking overnight. Barclays CEO Jess Staley is stepping down, this following an investigation into his relationship with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein.
It should come as no surprise that the bank reached
No client list, guys. No client list.
a settlement with the Virgin Islands for $75 million, along with another settlement for Epstein's victims, reportedly paying $290 million to over 100 girls abused by Epstein. Which is of course in addition to another $75 million settlement reached with Deutsche Bank, the biggest bank in Germany that, along with allegedly facilitating Epstein's trafficking ring from 2013 to 2018, has been embroiled in controversy throughout history, most notably when it financed Auschwitz in World War II. Though neither settlement required Deutsche or JP Morgan to formally admit to any wrongdoing, these hefty payments do indicate to me just how willing they were to make the story disappear as fast as possible. After all, JP Morgan settled just days after former CEO Jamie Dimon and his successor Mary Erdos were called back to court to be re-deposed. I think it's clear these banks had more than a vested interest to keep their ties to Epstein as quiet as possible.
There have been some headlines recently regarding Jeffrey Epstein and the ongoing litigation there. Has it impacted your brand equity at all?
A little bit sometimes, but we banked Jeffrey Epstein, and I'm so sorry that we did. I wish we hadn't. Had we known then, we know today, we obviously wouldn't have. And so...
have you changed the vetting of potential clients?
Yes. One of the more extraordinary revelations from the JP Morgan suit, though, is that we actually get to see more of Epstein's personal schedules, which identifies some of the people Epstein would meet with on a day-to-day basis, after he was a registered sex offender, of course. These names consisted of Woody Allen, Noam Chomsky, Bard College president Leon Botstein, and even former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, who first met Epstein in 2003 and went on to visit him in both New York and Florida at least 30 times between 2013 and 2017. The Times of Israel has also pointed out that this included monthly meetings the pair had throughout 2015, while Epstein was having to regularly meet with attorneys representing his many victims. The fact this guy was able to just continue dining with literal world leaders while at the same time popping in for a meeting with lawyers regarding numerous ongoing lawsuits is just insane to me, with Chomsky even trying to say that Epstein's prison time indicated a quote clean slate. Magician David Copperfield was also known to visit Epstein after his time in prison. According to Epstein's personal schedules, and a victim by the name of
Got a junk thumb? Got a flip-flop?
Johanna Schoberg, who testified that Copperfield once pulled her to the side and asked if she knew that girls were getting paid to find other girls. Out of all the powerful people Epstein mingled with during the last decade of his life, specifically, when he was a known child sex offender, I should emphasize once again, there are some who have managed to at least keep their stories straight. Bill Gates is not one of those people.
Okay, it's gonna get into Bill Gates, but I am gonna get Gates out of here.
About that time, eh, chaps? Righto.
It's about that time. All right, guys, I'm gonna get out of here, but don't leave. I'm gonna raid. Gonna raid. A former NASCAR driver's ex-wife was actually associated with Ghislaine Maxwell. He has since left her. Oh, I didn't know that. We're gonna raid. Okay. Let's see who's on. Do we want to do Daisy, Otto, or Mal's? Captain Mal's. Otto. Let's see. Okay, so Daisy is playing Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 and 4. Otto is playing Pete. And
And we say bye-bye.
Otto.
Oh, okay. Bowser is playing Fortnite. I mean, he redeemed it, so... Alright, we're going. Everybody, I hope you have a safe and wonderful night. I will be back, not tomorrow. I'm off tomorrow. I will be back on Sunday. Bye, everybody.